Chapter 1474. Shueisha's death. An angry roar came from below. Shueisha was lying in the deep pit, his hair disheveled. He looked like a ghost. The daytime golden wheel circled around Shueisha. At this moment, the golden light on its surface was somewhat dim. "You're dead. You'll die miserably." Shueisha's voice sounded a little crazy and even exasperated. Daytime. As soon as he finished speaking, the daytime golden wheel in Shueisha's hand began to emit a blazing golden light. Then, Shueisha threw the golden wheel into the sky, dyeing the whole sky golden. Then, the golden light fell around Zhuowen like raindrops, turning into dozens of suns that slowly surrounded Zhuowen. Looks like it's an additional skill of the daytime golden wheel. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. With dozens of suns circling around him, the scorching heat could almost dry up the rivers. Even Zhuowen felt a little thirsty. Moreover, the power of daytime was very terrifying. The whole natural world was like a furnace, the temperature rising to an extremely terrifying level. Many cultivators were unable to endure the heat, their bodies covered in cold sweat. Die. Shueisha's eyes were red, almost crazy. He pressed down with his right hand. Suddenly, the dozens of suns around Zhuowen began to expand, pressing toward Zhuowen. 9 stars 8 trigrams. Zhuowen was not afraid. He swung the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear in his hand, drawing a mysterious trajectory in the air. Stars began to rush out, outlining the trajectory of the 8 trigrams in the void, looking mysterious and magical. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear was formed, the dozens of suns around it finally expanded to the limit, their edges almost pressing against the surface of the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear. Boom! The fierce collision of the two profound saint artifacts caused an extremely dazzling explosion in the air. The saint aura that spread out shook the minds of many cultivators around. Zhuowen was extremely calm. The 9 stars 8 trigrams spear contained the defensive power of the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear. It was as solid as iron and extremely powerful. The power of daytime that Shueisha used with the daytime golden wheel was indeed terrifying, but it still could not break through the defense of the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear. Shueisha must die. Through the layers of golden light, Zhuowen's gaze passed through the dozens of suns and landed on Shueisha below. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Void. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. Then with a swoosh he disappeared into the void. Because Zhuowen was surrounded by dozens of suns, the blazing golden light almost blocked the vision and divine sense of other martial artists, so they had no idea what was happening inside. The moment Zhuowen stepped into the void, daytime's power exploded to the extreme. In the end, there was a loud explosion that shook the heavens and the earth. The power of the daytime golden wheel is extremely terrifying. Ordinary profound sages might not be able to walk out of it unscathed. The flower fairy's expression was grave. The might of Tianzhou's attack had even moved her. Shazi licked his lips and said indifferently, "Brother Yang Yi seems to have guessed wrongly. That one Zhua should be dead for sure." Yiksha smiled coldly. Although he did not say anything, his words and actions had already proved that his thoughts were similar to Shazi and the flower fairies. Yang Yi was still leaning on the stone pillar. He did not pay much attention to Shazi's mocking words. Or it could be said that he simply ignored Shazi. On the square platform of the Death Ghost realm, the undying old monster sighed and said with a faint smile, "It seems that Shueisha is going to win. That's natural. After all, Shueisha is a monstrous genius that our undying altar has nurtured with all our strength. Although that one Zhua is not weak and has a profound sage artifact, his strength is definitely not as good as Shueisha's." The several elders behind the undying old monster hurriedly nodded and bowed. However, Shueisha's gaze was slightly furrowed. He felt that something was strange, and an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from behind him. Shueisha's pupils shrank. He suddenly shouted and twisted his waist, forcibly turning around. "You! How did you get out of the encirclement of daylight?" Shueisha's eyes narrowed into needles as he stared at the figure behind him. He could not help but scream loudly. "That's how I got out." Zhuowen smiled faintly. His figure did not change. Like a fish swimming in water, he suddenly threw out the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear in his hand. The law of desolation gushed out from his palm and gathered in the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear. In an instant, the power of the law of desolation and the power of the profound sage artifact caused the power of the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear to reach an unprecedented level. Shueisha was not afraid. The daylight golden wheel in his right hand also blasted out. The law of death enveloped the surface of the daylight golden wheel, causing the power of the daylight golden wheel to increase by several times. Whoosh! When Zhuowen arrived in front of Shueisha, his right foot suddenly stomped on the side. His entire body seemed to have teleported, disappearing in front of Shueisha. Boom! Shueisha's daylight golden wheel suddenly swung out. However, it only hit an illusory figure. What's going on? The attack missed, causing Shueisha to fall into a momentary daze. It was this momentary daze that caused Shueisha to reveal a fatal flaw. He saw that Zhuowen had unknowingly appeared behind Shueisha. Puchi! The 9 stars 8 trigrams spear silently pierced into Shueisha's back. The sound of the sharp weapon piercing into flesh, coupled with the scene of blood spurting out, looked very tragic. Shueisha's body suddenly froze. He slowly turned his head and stared at the indifferent young man behind him. He wanted to speak, but he spat out a mouthful of blood and could not speak. Die! Zhuowen said expressionlessly. After saying this, he clenched the spear in his right hand and spun it. Suddenly, the 9 stars 8 trigrams spear began to spin at high speed. The terrifying saint aura of the profound sage artifact continued to run amok in Shueisha's body. Puchi! Shueisha only had time to scream before he was affected by the terrifying saint aura. His entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. As for Shueisha's yuanying, Zhuowen grabbed it in his hand and unceremoniously pressed it between his eyebrows, handing it over to Cheng Huang to deal with. An extremely tragic rain of blood fell from the sky above the 7th arena. The number 1 genius of the Undying Altar, Shueisha, had died a tragic death in the 7th arena. This was something that no one had expected. The smile on the Undying Old Monster's face froze. The higher-ups of the Undying Altar behind him also fell into silence. The Flower Fairy, Shazi and Yiksha, who were still discussing animatedly, also froze on the spot. The 3 of them first looked at Zhuowen, who was floating in the air, and then at Yang Yi, who was leaning against a stone pillar and seemed to be dozing off. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Now, Wenjua's actions were indeed as Yang Yi had expected. He had directly killed Shueisha. Could this dark horse Wenjua, who had suddenly appeared, be someone that Yang Yi was familiar with? Harboring such doubts, the 3 of them looked at Zhuowen with fear. Being able to kill Shueisha was enough to prove how powerful the latter was. This Zhuowen is actually so strong. On the first arena, Qing Longzi frowned as he thought to himself, "Little bastard, you actually killed Shueisha? You little bastard." The instant everyone fell into silence, an earth-shattering roar rang out from the square platform of the Undying Realm. Soon after, everyone was stunned to discover that the Undying Old Monster on the square platform of the Undying Realm had scarlet eyes. His right foot stepped on the square platform as he rushed towards the 9 underworld sky platform. The Undying Old Monster was indeed in existence at the peak of the profound Saint Realm. The 9 underworld sky platform originally had a powerful restriction, but this fellow had actually forcefully stepped across the White Jade Bridge and directly arrived at the edge of the platform. However, the instant the Undying Old Monster entered the 9 underworld sky platform, a terrifying and imposing force came crashing down. The Undying Old Monster's expression changed drastically as he let out a muffled groan and retreated. Scram! It's not up to you to interfere in the matters of the 9 underworld conference. Chao Rong stood in the air above the 9 underworld sky platform, coldly staring at the Undying Old Monster. Lord Chao Rong, this person is too rebellious. He actually dared to kill someone in public during the 9 underworld conference. He's too arrogant. We can't condone such a little bastard. The Undying Old Monster stabilized his body as he stared at Chao Rong with fear, not daring to act rashly. Chao Rong was not only a heavenly saint expert, but also a member of the Primal Chaos Temple. Whether it was strength or the force behind him, He was an existence that the undying altar could not contend against. The undying old monster was extremely afraid of him. It's inevitable that there will be casualties in battle. Why do you care so much? Furthermore, I didn't say that you can't kill people in the arena. So this Zhuowen didn't violate the rules, Chao Rong said indifferently. The undying old monster's expression froze as his gaze flickered. In the end he sighed softly and said, "Since that's the case, Lord Chao Rong should return the daytime golden wheel to us. That thing is the profound saint artifact of my undying altar. This daytime golden wheel is not bad. I'll take it as my spoil of war and reluctantly accept it." At this moment, Zhuowen waved his right hand and held the daytime golden wheel in his hand. After carefully examining it for a while, he stuffed the golden wheel into his spiritual ring without blushing. This scene made the undying old monster so angry that he almost wanted to kill someone. However, Chao Rong was in front of him, so he did not dare to act rashly. Chao Rong only glanced at Zhuowen behind him and said indifferently, "Since the person was killed by Wenjue, then the things on the person's body are indeed Wenjue's spoils of war. It's his freedom to distribute the things however he wants." The undying old monster's expression changed slightly, but he did not dare to say anything. He only glared at Zhuowen fiercely, and could only return to the square platform embarrassedly. He could only swallow this loss. After all, with Chao Rong present, he could not deal with Wenjue. After the 9 Underworld Conference ends, I'll make this kid beg for death. Returning to the square platform, the undying old monster fiercely threw down these ruthless words with a ferocious and terrifying expression. On the square platform of the martial nether realm, Wu Ho's eyes narrowed slightly. The scene of Wenjue suddenly disappearing just now, the power of law that permeated the air, was actually so familiar. However, because the distance was too far, coupled with the fact that the power of law was extremely weak, he could not see it clearly. Chapter 1475. Competing for Saint Luck. When Shueisha died, the Saint Luck in his body rushed out and poured into Zhuowen's glabella. Blazing golden light spilled out. In an instant, the golden rune on Zhuowen's glabella began to expand and split into 2 more golden runes. At this moment, there were 3 golden runes on Zhuowen's glabella. At this moment, Zhuowen quietly floated in the air with narrowed eyes, silently feeling the benefits of the Saint Luck. 3 golden runes meant that the effect of the Saint Luck was much more powerful than 1 golden rune. Zhuowen had a total of 5 laws, and his understanding of the 5 laws of ice, fire, void, death, and desolation was becoming more and more profound. The golden light from the 3 golden runes was extremely blazing. Even the back of Zhuowen's head was shining with a dazzling golden light, like a lifelike ancient Buddha. It's still not enough. 3 golden runes are not enough. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. After expanding to 3 golden runes, his understanding of the laws was much deeper than before. He was confident that in his current state, he could use the laws much more skillfully than before. There was no doubt that the power of the laws was much stronger than before. Number 15. Wenjue's 100 win streak. Chao Rong glanced sideways at Zhuowen and announced loudly, immediately causing an uproar in the 7th arena. As for Zhuowen taking the daytime golden wheel without blushing, he also turned a blind eye. Although a profound saint weapon was quite rare, it was only relative to the 9th netherworld realm. For a colossus like the Primal Chaos Temple, a profound saint weapon was actually not very rare. In addition, Chao Rong was a heavenly saint, so he really did not covet the daytime golden wheel in Zhuowen's hands. Zhuowen walked down from the void step by step, welcoming the countless awe-inspiring gazes below the arena like a king. I didn't expect the winner of the 100 win streak in the 7th arena to be an unknown guy. The number 1 genius of the Demon God Palace, Yun Ran, looked curiously at Zhuowen, who was walking down from the arena. Wu Dai, who was standing beside Yun Ran, also looked at Zhuowen's back with a hint of curiosity. She did not know why, but the young man in front of her gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she had seen him somewhere before. But when she carefully looked at the young man's face, she found that he was still extremely strange. So familiar yet strange, Wu Dai whispered, her heart trembling. Now that the point challenge tournament is over, the top 100 have been selected. Chao Rong's words as a line's void suddenly void behind him. Taking a closer look, the names as editor's rune. The names as note. Seeing the names as seeing fangs as the book runes transin. Zhangziu. SSSSS. Only 100 out of 3,000 people advanced. The elimination rate was too high. It was destined that only a few people would be able to enter the third stage. Those in the top 100, follow me to the next area. Those who have been eliminated, return to the square in front of the 9th Underworld Sky platform. After Chao Rong finished speaking, he leaped into the void and headed to another area beside the natural world. As for the top 100 cultivators, they looked at each other and followed behind Chao Rong without any hesitation. As for the remaining people, they left the natural world in despair. Outside the 9th Underworld Sky platform, countless people's eyes were focused on the list of the top 100 that Chao Rong had arranged. Although many of the top 100 martial artists had the same number of points, there were even many who had full points. But even if they had the same number of points, Chao Rong would still rank the martial artists according to their performance in the arena. Among them, the top 15 martial artists of the arena competition received the most attention. First place Qing Longzi, second place Yin Ruhua, third place Yang Yi, fourth place Gui Sha, fifth place Flower Fairy, sixth place Lu Hantian, seventh place Tianlong, eighth place Mo Wen, ninth place Shazi, 10th place Wen Zhua, 11th place Yiksha, 12th place Yun Ran, 13th place Jian Mu, 14th place Supreme Demon Lord, 15th place Buddhist Scripture. Many dark horses had appeared in this arena competition. Originally, everyone thought that the top 10 would be monopolized by the top geniuses of the 9 underworld realms, but this was not the case. Among them, Yin Ruhua, Lu Hantian, Long Tian, and Wen Zhuo were not famous in the 9 underworld realm, but now they had rushed into the top 10 in one go. They could be said to be the most incredible dark horses of this arena competition. In particular, Yin Ruhua, Lu Hantian, and Long Tian were all profound sages. This kind of cultivation made many martial artists feel a little surprised. As for Wen Zhuo, because he had not entered the sage realm, he was a little inconspicuous compared to Yin Ruhua and the other two. Seeing that both his demonic and Buddhist avatars had entered the top 15, Zhuowen nodded inwardly, extremely satisfied in his heart. Speaking of which, the two avatars were very talented. If it were not for the fact that they were demonic cultivators and Buddhist cultivators, they would have already become sages. However, even though they had not entered the sage realm, the two avatars already had the strength of an initial profound sage. At least, ordinary sages in the void sage realm would not be able to do anything to these two avatars. As for Wu Dai, Mo Yin Wushang, Jia Nan and Gatha, who Zhuowen paid more attention to, they had all entered the top 100. However, Mo Lingtian was quite unlucky because he was assigned to the first arena, which was the arena where Qing Longzi was. The comprehensive strength of the first arena was very strong. Although Mo Lingtian's cultivation was not weak, he was still eliminated in the first arena. Among the top 15, in the 9 underworld realms, except for the martial dark realm, there were more or less one or several disciples who had entered. However, there was not a single disciple from the martial dark realm. In fact, among the top 100 this time, there were only 2 disciples from the martial dark realm, which made Wu Ho's expression extremely ugly. These 2 disciples were both in the 9th Heaven Emperor realm before. Later, they relied on the Saint Luck to comprehend the laws and advance to the invincible Emperor realm. I hope Gu Hui and Hede can perform well in the 3rd round. Wu Ho's eyes were filled with helplessness. The core disciples, and the number 1 prodigy of the sacred martial sect, were all killed by Zhuowen alone. In such a short period of time, the sacred martial sect was unable to cultivate a truly powerful younger generation. Thinking of this matter, the more Wu Ho thought about it, the angrier he became. He wished he could tear Zhuowen into pieces and grind his bones to dust. The location of the 3rd round was in the most central area of the 9 underworld platform. It was extremely large, spanning tens of thousands of miles. There were dilapidated fences and dilapidated walls, a barren desert. Inside there were rugged rocks and sand. In the center of this land, there was a terrifying ravine that was hundreds of feet deep. It was as if the earth had been blasted open by a giant blade that was hundreds of feet long. At the same time, there were dilapidated buildings scattered all over the place. These buildings were like temples. The surface of the temples was pale yellow, as if they had been weathered for countless years. In the sky above this land, there was a thick yellow fog. This yellow fog was constantly changing, forming all kinds of shapes. There were birds and beasts, pavilions and terraces moreover. Zhuowen could clearly feel that this fog was not as simple as a natural landscape. It was very likely that it had extremely powerful offensive power. The third round is called Fighting for Saint Luck. Being able to enter the third round means that you are already a genius among geniuses in this 9 Underworld conference. Among you, the least has 1 golden pattern, and the most has 4 or 5 golden patterns. Chao Rong floated above the fog, looking down at the people below, and continued in a clear voice. Now, I can tell you clearly that the real benefit of Saint Luck is in this third round. In this third round, you can snatch the saint luck of others and absorb it into yourself. Moreover, once someone has 10 golden patterns, they will directly become a saint. Even if they have already become a profound sage, they will be able to advance by a small realm without any side effects. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the countless cultivators below burned with passion, especially for those cultivators who had yet to enter the saint realm. Their eyes burst with a blazing light. Even Qing Longzi, Yen Ruhua, and the others, who had already become profound sages, were moved. It was very difficult to become a saint. If one did not have a heaven-defying opportunity, or the full support of a great force, becoming a saint was almost an unattainable dream. Even if one became a saint, the small realms they were divided into were extremely difficult to advance. It would take many years of accumulation to break through a small realm. Now in the third round, Fighting for Saint Luck, once the number of golden patterns between one's eyebrows reached 10, they could directly become a saint or advance by a small realm. This benefit was absolutely heaven-defying. The third round is also the last round. Here, you can fight to your heart's content, and vent to your heart's content. In the end, I will select the top 9, and give you the keys to the central region. Of course, if any of you perform well, I will also recommend you to the Chaos Temple. Chao Rong had his hands behind his back, quietly looking down at the crowd below. What he said made the crowd below burst into an uproar. The key to the central region, and the possibility of being recommended to the Chaos Temple? Many cultivators were shocked. The key to the central region was already very attractive to them, not to mention the opportunity to be recommended to the Chaos Temple. The Chaos Temple was a giant force in the central region, and its sphere of influence was much larger than the total area of the 9th Netherworld realm. Moreover, it was said that the cultivation methods of the arcanists of the Eastern region, Southern region, Arctic region, and Western region were inherited from the Chaos Temple of the central region. It could be said that if one could climb up the Chaos Temple, they would undoubtedly have a meteoric rise in the future. Not to mention Zhuowen, even Qing Longzi, Yen Ruhua, and the other top geniuses, who were originally calm like an ancient well, became fanatical and restless. Brother Qing Longzi, how about we join forces to compete for Saint Luck? Yen Ruhua suddenly said to Qing Longzi. Chapter 1476. Yellow fog. The corners of Yen Ruhua's mouth curled into a subtle smile. His eyes were filled with cruelty. Qing Longzi had 6 golden lines between his eyebrows, and he had 5 golden lines between his eyebrows. The 2 of them were the closest to 10 golden lines among the 100 people. Yen Ruhua knew that if he joined forces with Qing Longzi, they would definitely surpass all the difficulties. It wouldn't be a problem for them to snatch all the golden lines from the others. Although Chao Rong had said that if one gathered 10 golden lines, they would obtain great benefits. Those who hadn't reached the saint realm could become a saint, and those who had become a saint realm cultivator could advance by a small stage. But what if one could gather more golden lines? Without a doubt, the more golden lines one gathered, the more benefits one would obtain. After all, the third stage was called the Fight for Saint Luck, which meant that the Saint Luck in this stage had to be obtained through fighting. As long as one was strong enough, not to mention 10 golden lines. Even if one had 20, 30 or more golden lines, one could snatch them from others. Zhuowen's eyes flickered, although the fight for Saint Luck hadn't started yet. Judging from Chao Rong's tone and the restless crowd around him, the competition in this stage would be extremely intense. I won't say much. The central area of the 9 Serenity Sky platform is surrounded by yellow fog all year round. You'd better pay attention to the yellow fog, because there are many tiny creatures living in it. These creatures are extremely destructive. If you breathe them into your body, these little things will cause inhumane destruction. After Chao Rong reminded them, he waved his sleeve, and the restriction around the central area was opened. Go in. Swoosh. Swoosh. As soon as these words were spoken, countless figures rushed towards the central area like locusts. They plunged into the depths of the yellow fog, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Long Tian silently rushed to Zhuowen's side, a trace of inquiry in his eyes. As Zhuowen was still using Wenjue's identity, his old friends didn't recognize him at all. Only his 2 clones and Long Tian knew his identity. Of course, Zhuowen also noticed that the lazy Yang Yi kept looking at him meaningfully, which made Zhuowen frown slightly. This Yang Yi is not simple. Could it be that he has noticed something? Zhuowen said with a frown. In his mind, Xiao He faintly said, I don't think so. Your 100 transformation divine technique has already been cultivated to the point of perfection. Even Chao Rong couldn't see through your disguise. That Yang Yi is just a profound sage. It's impossible for him to see through your disguise. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded and whispered to Long Tian, let's go in too. Long Tian naturally wouldn't disobey Zhuowen's orders. After speaking, the 2 of them followed closely behind the large group and entered the yellow fog. That sky dragon seems to be very close to that Wenjue, and it seems like he listens to that Wenjue. Tian Long and Wenjue, as the top 10 existences in this point arena, naturally attracted the attention of many warriors. When the 2 of them walked together, it also caused many people to be surprised. Sect Master, from the looks of it, that sky dragon seems to be in cahoots with Wenjue. On the square platform where the undying sacred altar was located, many elders behind the undying old monster frowned slightly. Just the strength that Wenjue had displayed was already troublesome enough. Now, there was an even more terrifying profound sage-level sky dragon beside him. For the people of the undying sacred altar, who wanted to take revenge, it was indeed a bit troublesome. When the 9 Nether Conference is over, Wenjue will die no matter what. If that sky dragon also wants to interfere, then we will kill both of them at all costs, the undying old monster said fiercely. Hearing this, the many elders behind the undying old monster lowered their heads slightly, their eyes full of reverence. They knew that the undying old monster was really angry this time. He actually planned to kill both Wenjue and Sky Dragon at all costs. The yellow fog filled the surroundings. As soon as Zhuowen entered this place, he felt dizzy, but after some adjustment, he slowly got used to it. Sure enough, there are tiny creatures here. Zhuowen took a deep breath and inhaled a mouthful of yellow mist. Soon after, he keenly discovered that the yellow mist was filled with densely packed tiny insects. These insects were very small, and ordinary people couldn't see them with their naked eyes. Even Zhuowen relied on the mental energy in his body to reach his lungs. Only then could he barely distinguish the shape of these insects. These insects were yellow in appearance, and there were many barbs on their surface. There was a huge mouth part on their heads, and there were many sharp teeth in this mouth part. They looked extremely ferocious. The shape of these insects was simply a destructive machine. Once they entered a human body, they only needed to twist their bodies, and the barbs on their surface would be able to pierce through the flesh of the human body. However, Zhuowen wasn't afraid at all. His physical body had already become a sage, and his bones were the golden bones of Lawrence, a sage body. From the inside to the outside, he had reached the point of invulnerability. Although these tiny insects looked quite terrifying, when they entered Zhuowen's lungs, just as they were about to destroy them, they found that they couldn't do anything. It was as if they weren't touching flesh but stone. Long Tian couldn't do the same. Although he had already become a profound sage, his internal organs were still extremely fragile. After entering the yellow fog, Long Tian immediately shielded his 5 senses and acupoints to prevent the tiny insects in the yellow fog from invading his body. Zhuowen, aren't you afraid of the insects in the yellow fog? Long Tian noticed Zhuowen's state and couldn't help but ask in surprise. I've tempered my body before, and my internal organs are much stronger than those of ordinary martial artists. These insects can't hurt me, Zhuowen said lightly. Hearing this, Long Tian nodded and didn't ask any more questions. However, in his heart he was even more in awe of Zhuowen. Although his cultivation was much higher than Zhuowen's, he knew that if he were to fight against Zhuowen, he wouldn't be his opponent at all. One more thing, let me remind you. In here, your power of laws, mental force, spirit, and even your spirit rings can't be used. If you want to obtain power, you have to follow the feeling of Saint Luck. Suddenly, an illusory voice came from above the yellow fog. The owner of this voice was no stranger to Zhuowen and Long Tian. It was Chaorong. Sure enough, as Chaorong said, I can't use any of the laws and spirit energy in my body, and I can't even open my spirit rings, Long Tian said with a bitter smile. Zhuowen nodded. He had also discovered this. It could be said that he couldn't use anything on his body. Even the ice-fire eyes formed by the ice-fire holy rune was difficult for Zhuowen to use. It was as if there was some kind of mysterious power in this yellow fog that was imprisoning all of their strength and means. However, the power of the physical body can't be imprisoned in this yellow fog. Zhuowen smiled and said silently in his heart. Although the power of the physical body was also suppressed, it wasn't completely unusable. Zhuowen could still use some of its power. Most of our strength is imprisoned here, so what should we use to fight? Long Tian frowned and said helplessly. Chaorong said to follow the feeling of Saint Luck. The only thing that can be mobilized here is Saint Luck. Zhuowen said indifferently. The 3 golden lines between his eyebrows flashed with a blazing golden light, and then the golden light turned into a ray of light that shot out in a certain direction. Long Tian followed suit and urged the golden lines between his eyebrows. The ray of light he emitted swept in the opposite direction of Zhuowen. What's going on? Long Tian asked in confusion. Let's follow the rays of light. Maybe we'll know when we get there, Zhuowen said. Long Tian nodded. There was no other way now. Zhuowen's method was relatively reasonable. Whoosh whoosh. Zhuowen and Long Tian weren't indecisive people. Since they had decided, the two of them immediately flew in the opposite direction and passed by each other. The golden words were still floating in the void above the 9th underworld sky platform. The names on the words were all shining with golden light. Suddenly, the golden light of the names at the bottom of the list dimmed and became almost transparent. Someone's already dead. These people are rogue cultivators. Their strength is at the bottom of the top 100. It hasn't been long since we entered, and someone has already died. Isn't this too fast? The abnormality of the words attracted the attention of many people. Although Chaorong didn't say anything, the dimming of the names meant that someone had died. As long as one wasn't a fool, everyone knew that. Amidst the yellow mist, a vigorous figure shot out like an arrow from a bow. In front of the figure, there was a golden ray of light that extended into the depths of the yellow mist. The figure was closely following the ray of light. We're here. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. Through the layers of yellow mist, his gaze fell on a faint outline in front of him. He could clearly feel that the outline was the end of the ray of light. Zhuowen knew that the outline was the destination of this trip. Whoosh! Zhuowen stomped his foot, and his speed immediately increased. In approximately 10 minutes, he arrived at the destination of the outline. Creak! Stopping, Zhuowen raised his head slightly, and his gaze fell on the outline. It was a large but dilapidated temple. In front of the temple, there was a huge stone statue of a strange beast. The golden ray of light formed by the Saint Luck was heading towards the depths of the temple. Furthermore, Zhuowen also discovered that there were 5 other figures scattered around the temple apart from him. The 5 of them weren't weak. They were basically invincible emperor lords. 2 of them were wearing clothes that made Zhuowen's eyes narrow dangerously. The 2 of them had the word martial on their chests, which meant that they were disciples of the sacred martial sect. I heard that there are only 2 disciples of the sacred martial sect in the top 100 this time. I'm pretty lucky to meet these 2 at the start. Zhuowen's lips curled up as he sneered. Chapter 1477. Temple among the 5 people. The other 3 didn't belong to any faction. They were probably rogue cultivators. The strongest of the 3 was an invincible sovereign lord, and the other 2 were 9th-level great emperors. From the positions of the 5 people, it could be seen that the 2 disciples of the Saint Martial sect and the 3 rogue cultivators were confronting each other. However, Zhuowen's arrival immediately broke the stalemate between the 2 groups. Their gazes landed on Zhuowen in unison, revealing looks of dread. Zhuowen's performance in the second round was amazing. These 5 people were familiar with Zhuowen. Attack! Suddenly, the 2 disciples of the sacred martial sect shouted and dashed out in 2 different directions. However, their target wasn't Zhuowen. Instead, it was the strongest of the 3 rogue cultivators, the invincible Emperor Lord. The 3 rogue cultivators were focused on Zhuowen, so they didn't expect the 2 disciples of the sacred martial sect to attack. They were caught off guard. This was especially true for the invincible Monarch Realm rogue cultivator. He was flustered because he was the target of the 2 Saint Martial sect disciples. Die! Although they couldn't use any power of laws here, they could use the power of Saint Luck with the golden pattern between their eyebrows. Everyone here relied on Saint Luck to obtain the corresponding power. Otherwise they would be powerless. No! The rogue cultivator screamed. Although he was also using the power of Saint Luck, he was powerless against 2 cultivators of the same level. Pucci! The rogue cultivator couldn't hold on for long. Under the attacks of the 2, he completely lost his breath. A vast golden light burst out from the dead rogue cultivator's body and drilled into the bodies of the 2 sacred martial sect disciples. Originally, the 2 disciples of the sacred martial sect had 1.5 golden patterns between their eyebrows. But after receiving the golden patterns from the rogue cultivator, the golden patterns between their eyebrows became 2 golden patterns. Don't let these 2 go either. After tasting the sweetness of Saint Luck, the 2 of them were extremely greedy. They immediately attacked the other 2 9th-level great emperors. The 2 9th-level great emperors didn't have a single golden pattern between their eyebrows, but the golden light was extremely bright. It wasn't far from transforming into a golden pattern. After all, no matter how small a sesame seed was, it was still meat. Following 2 screams, the 2 rogue cultivators died at the hands of Gu Hui and Hida without exception. After killing the 3 people, the Saint Luck on the 2 of them became even more powerful. It was faintly showing signs of forming a 3rd golden pattern. Hee, this feels great. I didn't expect that in here. The stronger the Saint Luck is, the more terrifying the Saint Luck is, the more. Hida clenched his fist, he felt his body, and his eyes were filled with excitement. Gu Hui also grinned. However, his gaze was locked onto Zhuo Wen's body as he said to Hida. This one Zhuo has 3 golden runes on his body. I say, junior brother Hida, should we give it a try? Hida was startled, and immediately showed a trace of hesitation. When Zhuo in front of him was a terrifying guy who was ranked 9th this time. His cultivation was at the half-saint level. Even Shueisha was defeated by him. He was a ruthless person who couldn't be trifled with. Junior brother Hida, what are you afraid of? This one Zhuo's strength is indeed terrifying, but strength is useless here. Whether it's Yuan Qi, mental energy, Dharma laws, or even spiritual rings, they can't be used. He can't be compared to us at all. If we can obtain the golden patterns on his body, the golden patterns between our eyebrows will definitely transform again. At that time, it won't be difficult for us to have 4 golden patterns. Gu Hui continued to instigate, and Hida gradually moved. He gritted his teeth and said, Senior brother is right. This person is indeed strong, but it's not as good as before. In here, when Zhuo can't display any of his strength, snatch his golden patterns. With that, Gu Hui and Hida rushed out, directly toward Zhuowen. Their control of Saint Luck had reached an extremely high level. When they punched out, golden light burst out, as if it could shatter the space and trample the stars. Zhuowen was very calm, and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. When Gu Hui and Hida arrived in front of Zhuowen, Gu Hui punched out. Zhuowen threw out a punch and smashed it heavily in front of Gu Hui. The power of the holy body began to mobilize. Traces of golden veins covered the surface of Zhuowen's fist like a spider web. Die! The punch hit Gu Hui's fist and the latter screamed. His entire right arm was dislocated and shattered, and blood spurted out. The moment Zhuowen punched Gu Hui, Hida had already arrived behind Zhuowen. He lifted his right foot high and suddenly kicked down. With the support of Saint Luck, Hida's power rose to an extremely terrifying level. You're the one who's going to die. When Zhuowen forced Gu Hui back with a single punch, Hida's heart was filled with fear. However, when he arrived behind Zhuowen at this moment, the fear in his heart was replaced by ecstasy. After all, his kick was very powerful with the support of Saint Luck. When Zhuo couldn't take it at all, boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out. Hida's kick landed heavily on Zhuowen's back. The terrifying power seemed to be able to shatter an entire mountain. But Zhuowen didn't move. His legs seemed to be rooted to the ground, and he didn't move at all. How? How is this possible? At this moment, Hida was completely stunned, or rather, he was frightened. At this moment, Zhuowen also moved. His right hand formed a claw and suddenly reached behind his back. He grabbed Hida's right leg and squeezed. Crack! The sound of bones cracking rang out as Hida's right ankle was crushed. Hida couldn't help but scream. Zhuowen didn't care about Hida's scream at all. His right hand exerted force and threw Hida to the ground. The terrifying power caused the entire ground to tremble, and cracks appeared on the surface. Die! Zhuowen's movements were very fast. The moment Hida was thrown to the ground, he had already moved. His left hand grabbed Hida's head, and with a little force, his head exploded like a watermelon. The power of the saint body was too terrifying. It could be described as tens of thousands of kilograms of force. Under such great force, Hida died, and even his nascent soul couldn't escape. Swoosh! As soon as Hida died, the saint runes on his body turned into a golden light and drilled into Zhuowen's glabella. Originally, the 3 golden runes between his brows were emitting a blazing golden light. As they spread, 2 more golden runes spread out. At this moment, there were 5 golden runes on Zhuowen's body. The aura of the Saint Luck in his body was as vast as the ocean. Run! Seeing that Hida had been killed, Gu Hui was so shocked that his mind was in a mess. Without thinking, he planned to rush towards the temple in front of him. Zhuowen's eyes were cold, his legs bounced, and countless golden veins spread out from the bottom of his feet. Boom! A muffled thunder-like sound resounded as the ground beneath Zhuowen's feet shattered into countless pieces. Zhuowen shot out like a cannonball. His speed had soared to the limit, so fast that even his shadow could not be seen. No! Just as Gu Hui was about to enter the temple, Zhuowen had already arrived above Gu Hui. His right leg smashed down viciously, smashing heavily onto Gu Hui's spine. Puffed! Blood violently spurted out from Gu Hui's mouth as he viciously smashed onto the ground. His entire spine had been completely shattered by this tremendous force. Gu Hui could only barely struggle, but was completely unable to stand up. Boom! Zhuowen was like a god descending from the heavens. He descended from the sky and ruthlessly stomped on Gu Hui's back. Instantly, Gu Hui's entire body exploded into a bloody mist. Another golden light shot out and entered Zhuowen's glabella. Zhuowen's glabella now had 7 golden runes. At that moment, Zhuowen's entire body erupted with an extremely terrifying golden light, dyeing his entire body golden. This feels great. Silently feeling the benefits of the Saint Luck, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with excitement. Maybe I can really become a saint when I have 10 golden runes, Zhuowen murmured, and then his gaze fell on the temple in front of him. The golden light from the golden runes on my glabella swept into this temple. I wonder what's in this temple? With that, Zhuowen took a step forward and entered the temple in an instant. Whoosh! 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 The moment Zhuowen entered the temple, two figures with powerful auras rushed over. If Zhuowen was still here, he would definitely recognize these two people. Weren't they Qing Longzi and Yin Ruhua? Was there a great battle here? Qing Longzi looked around and quickly noticed the scattered corpses. This temple must have been taken by someone else. Let's go find another temple. We can hunt for other prey along the way. Yin Ruhua licked his lips. The golden runes on his glabella had grown to 8. He pointed at his glabella with his right hand, and the 8 golden runes left his body and formed a golden sword in front of him. This temple is really good. It actually hides a secret method of using the golden runes as a means of attack. Yin Ruhua chuckled and continued. With that, Yin Ruhua suddenly looked at Qing Longzi and said, "There must be someone in this temple. I say, Brother Qing Longzi, should we wait for him?" Qing Longzi shook his head and said indifferently, "Forget about waiting for him. We don't even know when he will come out. We can use this time to hunt for the golden runes on other cultivators." That's true. Waiting is a waste of time. Yin Ruhua nodded. Thus, the two of them discussed for a while more before leaving the temple. The moment He De and Gu Hui died, on the square platform where Martial Netherworld was located, Wu Ho froze on the spot. His gaze was fixated on the words, as his entire body trembled. He De and Gu Hui are both dead. Taking a deep breath, Wu Ho said softly. The elders behind him did not say anything. They knew very well that although Wu Ho looked calm on the surface, he was still a saint. Chapter 1478. Saint Luck Materialization. After entering the temple, Zhuowen noticed that it wasn't very large, and the surroundings were pitch black. However, with his eyesight, he was still able to see the general situation of the temple clearly. The decorations inside were very simple. There was a table in the center, and there were extremely scattered stone tables and stone stools in the surroundings. There was nothing else besides these. However, there were many strange and precious beasts carved on the surrounding walls of the temple. They were in strange shapes and were lifelike. However, Zhuowen had never seen or even heard of such a thing. Hundun by Zaying Long Candle Dragon. Unlike Zhuowen's indifference, Xiao He and Cheng Huang's voices suddenly exploded in his mind. After that, a ray of black light and a ray of yellow light flashed out from between Zhuowen's brows at the same time. Xiao He and Cheng Huang's gazes descended onto the surrounding wall carvings. What's wrong? You recognize these wall carvings as well? A trace of surprise appeared in Zhuowen's eyes, and he hurriedly asked Xiao He and Cheng Huang. The strange and precious beasts depicted on these wall carvings are all ancient strange beasts. However, all of these strange beasts perished in the ancient battle. Xiao Hei's gaze was complicated, and she couldn't help but shake her head and sigh with emotion. Xiao He is right. Every single one of these ancient strange beasts was comparable to a celestial saint, but none of them survived the ancient battle. Cheng Huang nodded. Comparable to a celestial saint, none of them survived? Zhuowen was stunned, and then he revealed an expression of shock. Celestial saint's strange beasts had actually perished because of this. He'd even heard about it from Xiao He in the past. Countless saints had fallen in that battle, and even celestial saints couldn't avoid it. Then, exactly what kind of battle could possess such terrifying might? What exactly was that battle all those years ago? Could it be related to Skyworm? Zhuowen was puzzled, but he quickly thought of the heavenly worm that even the Chaos Temple had to treat with caution. The Primal Chaos Temple was one of the top powers in the Central Plains. Something that even such a great power had to treat with caution was definitely extraordinary. Perhaps this heavenly worm was the mastermind behind the great battle back then. Your guess is not quite correct. That great battle was indeed somewhat related to the sky insect. However, the sky insect was not the main culprit. Xiao He shook her head and continued. Perhaps you don't know how powerful the Heavenly Armor Continent was 10,000 years ago. Back then, the Heavenly Armor Continent had a grand event like the Thousand Saints Conference. There were countless saints and many immortal saints. Furthermore, there were ultimate powerhouses in the divine transformation realm back then. A mere heavenly insect couldn't do anything to the Heavenly Armor Continent. Hearing this, Zhuowen became even more curious. It seemed that there were still some secrets about the great battle 10,000 years ago. Otherwise, Xiaohe wouldn't be so cautious. What made Zhuowen even more puzzled was that there was actually a powerhouse in the divine transformation realm 10,000 years ago. With such a terrifying powerhouse in charge, a mere heavenly insect might not have been able to threaten the entire continent. Then, what kind of thing could have destroyed the heavenly armor continent, which was at the peak of martial arts 10,000 years ago, into its current state? Perhaps sensing Zhuowen's puzzled gaze, Xiaohe sighed softly and said, "Let's not talk about this. When you really step into the central plains, the truth will slowly emerge. I'll only tell you that the 9 great sacred talismans in the legends of the heavenly armor continent have an inseparable relationship with that powerhouse in the divine transformation realm." Zhuowen frowned slightly, but could only sigh inwardly. He knew very well that since Xiaohe didn't say anything, it probably wasn't time yet. Or rather, he didn't have the qualifications to know the truth of the past. After looking around the temple again, Zhuowen found that there was nothing else around except for the wall carvings. However, his gaze quickly fell on the table in the center. Rolls of bamboo slips were casually placed on top of it, piled up into a small mountain. In the beginning, Zhuowen didn't pay much attention to the bamboo slips on the table. However, after looking around, he finally began to suspect that the bamboo slips in front of him were not ordinary. Walking in front of the table, Zhuowen reached out with his right hand, took the bamboo slips in his hand, and opened them. Whoosh! Suddenly, a strong light burst out from the bamboo slips. The glowing words inside were like a vortex, surrounding Zhuowen and wrapping him up. At the same time, the 7 golden runes between Zhuowen's eyebrows began to emit an extremely blazing golden light. Then, the golden runes began to peel off from between his eyebrows one by one. Saint Luck Concretization. You can concretize any weapon you imagine in your mind. The more golden runes there are, the more powerful the weapon will be. As the glowing words surrounded Zhuowen's body, a stream of content was transmitted to Zhuowen's mind. Saint Luck Concretization? After pondering for a moment, Zhuowen said in a deep voice, "Spear concretization." As soon as his voice fell, the 7 golden runes began to combine in front of him, forming a large golden spear that was about 10 feet long. On the surface of the large golden spear, golden runes flowed, looking mysterious and ancient. This process was very similar to the scene when Yen Ruhua concretized the golden runes into a long sword. Obviously, Yen Ruhua had also entered the temple and successfully concretized a long sword. Whoosh! Zhuowen swung the large golden spear in his hand. The blade of the spear cut through the air, producing a hissing sound that was extremely ear-piercing. The space where the spear had passed through was also torn into a black crack because of the powerful force. It's so sharp that it can even cut through space. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with joy as he muttered to himself. It seems that the purpose of this temple is to teach you how to materialize your own saint luck. The stronger your saint luck is, the stronger your weapon will be. It also means that if you want to become stronger, you have to fight for more saint luck from others. Xiaohe and Cheng Huang rushed to Zhuowen's side and stared at the large golden spear in Zhuowen's hand with satisfaction. Zhuowen immediately summoned Xiaohe and Cheng Huang into his sea of consciousness and stepped out of the temple. Maybe it's time to summon my 2 clones back. It's time to do something big. Walking out of the temple, Zhuowen suddenly found that there were 3 people gathered outside the temple. Perhaps it was because they saw Zhuowen come out, but the 3 people who were waiting suddenly had a look of fear in their eyes. "It's Wenjua. Let's go," one of the young men in black said in a low voice, and immediately fled into the distance. The other 2 were stunned for a moment, and immediately followed the young man. The 3 of them were quite fast and disappeared in a flash. "Shuri." Looking at the young man in black who fled without even looking, Zhuowen's lips curled into a smile. Zhuowen was no stranger to this young man. Just like him, he was Shuri, a disciple of the League of Assassins in the 7th arena during the 2nd round of the competition for Saint Luck. At that time, after Zhuowen had killed Wu Lan and Zheng Tang in the arena, he had met Shuri later on. Originally, Zhuowen had planned to get rid of Shuri quickly and cleanly, but the latter was extremely cunning. He had hidden himself with the art of assassination and immediately forfeited, thus avoiding death. Now that he had met Shuri again, how could Zhuowen let him go? And the two people behind Shuri, looking at their clothes, were also disciples of the League of Assassins. Moreover, their cultivation was not weak. They were both invincible emperor lords. You can't run away. Zhuowen smiled coldly. The golden rune between his eyebrows swept out and formed a golden spear. Immediately after, Zhuowen threw it directly at Shuri, who was fleeing. No! Feeling the whistling wind behind him, Shuri's face turned ferocious. He roared angrily and directly turned around. He tried his best to mobilize the power of Saint Luck to block the spear. Shuri also had 2 golden runes, but he had not learned the ability to materialize Saint Luck. Obviously, Shuri had not entered any of the temples. This also meant that Shuri would be at a great disadvantage under this attack. Pucci. Without a doubt, Shuri's defense was like a piece of paper. The golden spear's aura was like a rainbow as it directly pierced through his body. Shuri's body was torn apart, and a cloud of blood mist burst out. Run! Looking at Shuri, who had been killed in an instant, the other 2 disciples of the League of Assassins shouted and fled in 2 different directions. Whoosh! Zhuowen swept to the side of the golden spear, grabbed the handle with his right hand, and threw the golden spear towards the young man on the right. Zhuowen's body chased after the man on the left. Relying on the power of the saint body, Zhuowen was like a vigorous cheetah, constantly running on the ground at an extremely fast speed. Ah! A miserable cry rang out. The golden spear caught up with the young man on the right and pierced through his chest. Without any surprise, he exploded into a cloud of blood mist and died. No, I can't die. The martial artist on the left naturally heard his companion's miserable cry and was even more frightened. Even if you don't want to die, you have to die. An indifferent voice sounded out. Immediately, the martial warrior saw that Zhuowen had unknowingly appeared in front of him. That huge fist rumbled as it smashed towards the martial warriors. No! The martial artist on the left wanted to make a last-ditch effort and quickly used the power of the Saint Luck. Boom! However, even if the martial artist used the power of the Saint Luck, under the attack of Zhuowen's powerful saint body, it seemed very fragile. The defense set up by the Saint Luck was directly shattered. Pucci, looking at the disciples of the League of Assassins who had been blasted into pieces, Zhuowen's eyes were indifferent, without any pity. Whoosh! 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 3 golden lights gushed out from the 3 corpses and drilled into Zhuowen's glabella. Immediately, the golden rune on Zhuowen's glabella began to spread and finally condensed into the 8th golden rune. Only 1 golden rune has been condensed? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and revealed a look of doubt. Shuri and the other 2 disciples of the League of Assassins had a total of 5 golden runes. 5 golden runes only added 1 golden rune, which made Zhuowen feel a little helpless. Chapter 1479. 10 golden runes amidst the endless yellow fog. The slaughter was carried out silently. Battles were spreading out almost every moment, and the aftermath of the battle was surging. 3 days had passed, and half of the names on the light screen had dimmed. However, the dimmed names didn't necessarily mean that they were dead. Some of them were lucky enough to be sent out. After being defeated, those who were sent out decisively took out their Saint Luck and gave it to the winner. If they didn't have a death grudge, the winner of the battle wouldn't casually kill his opponent. Someone has reached 10 golden runes. Suddenly, a golden light soared into the sky. Chao Rong raised his head and looked at the golden light. His voice was so loud that everyone on the square platform could hear it clearly. Who is it? Chao Rong's announcement caused an uproar. They looked around, wanting to see who the owner of the 10 golden runes was. It's Qinglongzi. Look, he's about to advance. Suddenly, a surprised voice was transmitted over. Immediately, everyone followed that person's instructions and shot their gazes over. On a rock to the east of the yellow fog world, Qinglongzi silently stood there. Between his eyebrows, 10 golden lines flickered with a blazing golden light. A vast saint aura spread out from Qing Longzi's body and soared into the sky. It was like a golden rod piercing through the sky. Looking at Qing Longzi, who was covered in golden light, Sapphire Shore smiled and said, "It seems that Qing Longzi is about to advance to the Glimpse Profound Saint Realm. In the Yellow Mist world, the Glimpse Profound Saint Realm is the most terrifying realm. Who can compete with Qing Longzi?" Elder Raiwa's eyes flashed in surprise. The smile on Sapphire Shore's face grew wider, but his words were modest. "Isn't Ruhua still missing one golden rune? If he can gather 10 golden runes, he should be able to advance to the second Nirvana Saint Realm," Sapphire Shore said with a smile. Elder Raiwa nodded and looked at the rock not far from where Qing Longzi was. There was another figure standing there. It was none other than Yin Ruhua. Yin Ruhua stared enviously at Qing Longzi, who was in the midst of breaking through, and muttered in a low voice, "I'm still missing one golden pattern. I must gather 10 golden patterns, so that I can directly break through to the second profound Nirvana Profound Saint Realm." Qing Longzi's breakthrough caused a huge commotion, and attracted the attention of all the cultivators in the Yellow Mist world. Whoosh! Whoosh! They all gathered 100 meters away from Qing Longzi, not daring to get close. Qing Longzi's strength was terrifying, and they didn't dare to act rashly. Moreover, Yin Ruhua was standing guard not far from Qing Longzi. Whoosh! Senior brother Qing Longzi is. These 4 were the disciples of the Blue Dragon Hall. The one in the lead looked skinny, but the aura on his body was extremely terrifying. He should have reached the semi-saint realm. "Brother Qing Longzi is about to break through. You guys wait for a while," Yin Ruhua said indifferently. The 4 disciples looked at each other with cautious eyes. Immediately, the golden runes on their foreheads flickered and materialized into their respective weapons. They were secretly on guard against the other cultivators gathering around them. Qing Longzi was about to break through, so they naturally had to guard him well. If he was disturbed by others, then all their efforts would be in vain. This Qing Longzi is really powerful. He actually gathered 10 golden runes so quickly. When he breaks through to the Nirvana Saint Realm, I'm afraid that no one in the Yellow Mist world will be his opponent. The Flower Fairy and 2 other women stood in a withered tree. Their beautiful eyes stared at Qing Longzi. The Flower Fairy already had 7 golden runes, but compared to Qing Longzi and Yin Ruhua, there was still a certain gap. Although the Flower Fairy was extremely eager for the golden runes on Qing Longzi's body, she also understood that not to mention Qing Longzi, even Yin Ruhua, was enough to make him suffer. Not only the Flower Fairy, but Gui Sha, Shazi, Yeksha, Yun Ran and Yang Yi, the top geniuses of the Nether Realm, also gathered around. However, they were all on guard against each other. After all, they were all monstrous geniuses of the Nether Realm, and their strength was extremely terrifying. Coupled with the cruelty of the 3rd stage of the competition for Saint Luck, it was basically impossible to trust anyone who didn't unify their forces. After all, no one knew if they would suddenly attack and seize their Saint Luck. "Zhuowen, what should we do?" On another rock, Long Tian whispered to Zhuowen. Long Tian was a descendant of the Ryuka and had a natural hatred for the Blue Dragon Hall. Now he couldn't wait to kill Qing Longzi and the other disciples of the Blue Dragon Hall. "Wait!" Zhuowen shook his head slightly, and then his mind moved slightly, as if he was communicating with something. On the other side, Mo1, who was behind Gui Sha, narrowed his eyes slightly, and wisps of demonic chi rolled out. Mo1, what's wrong with you?" Gui Sha tilted his head slightly, and a pair of soul-stirring eyes stared coldly at Mo1. "Nothing." Mo1 was expressionless as he answered indifferently, and the demonic chi on his body gradually withdrew. Hearing this, Gui Sha frowned. Just now, he could feel an extremely terrifying demonic chi gushing out of Mo1's body. On the other side, a subtle smile appeared at the corner of Buddha's mouth, and the Buddha's light around him became more intense, like a slowly rising sun. Eldest senior brother is about to break through, and has reached a critical moment. We have to protect him well. The skinny disciple of the Blue Dragon Hall also felt the sudden intense demonic chi on Qing Longzi's body. He narrowed his eyes and shouted to the other disciples. Yes. The remaining 3 disciples nodded. They didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Their eyes revealed vigilance as they secretly took precautions. Long Tian, you go first. I'll wait for an opportunity, Zhuan said in a low voice. Long Tian nodded, and then took a step forward, directly rushing towards Qing Longzi. Stop him. The 4 disciples of the Blue Dragon Hall narrowed their eyes to needles. The weapons formed by the golden patterns in their hands exploded with blazing golden light, and they all blasted towards Long Tian. Long Tian coldly snorted. He grabbed with his right hand, and the 7 golden patterns between his eyebrows separated from his body, turning into a large golden halberd that was 10 feet long. Boom! He suddenly swept his right hand, and golden light filled the sky. Countless golden halberd shadows swirled in all directions, and crushed down like a mountain. Stop him! The 4 disciples of the Blue Dragon Hall were also capable. The weapons in their hands continuously blasted out, forming an airtight golden barrier that barely blocked Long Tian's attack. You're courting death, Yin Ruhua coldly sneered. He took a step forward, and his right fist flickered with blazing golden light, and blasted towards Long Tian. This fist carried the power of 10,000 caddies, as if it could collapse the entire sky and smash it into pieces. Feeling the terrifying power of this fist, Long Tian's face changed greatly. He swept the golden halberd in his right hand, and tried to block Yin Ruhua's fist. However, the 4 disciples of the Blue Dragon Hall were extremely clever. They desperately attacked, and actually managed to entangle Long Tian. For a moment, Long Tian became Yin Ruhua's living target. Long Tian is courting death if he goes alone. The flower fairy curled her lips and sneered. After all, Yin Ruhua had gathered 9 golden runes. Her power was vast and mighty. She was much stronger than the average warrior. Although Long Tian also had 7 golden runes, he was probably not Yin Ruhua's opponent. In the flower fairy's view, Long Tian's attack was simply unwise. Attack. The moment Yin Ruhua attacked, Mo1, who had been standing behind Gui Sha, suddenly jumped out. Like a wisp of green smoke, he swept in front of Yin Ruhua in an instant. At the same time, the Buddhist rune on the other side also burst with golden light. A huge light wheel appeared behind his head, and he descended like a god or a demon. Mo1 and Buddhist rune descended together, and instantly blocked in front of Yin Ruhua. Boom! The 3 collided, and an extremely terrifying fluctuation erupted. Immediately, Yin Ruhua retreated a few steps, while Mo1 and Buddhist rune retreated more than 10 steps. Gui Sha was stunned. He did not expect that Mo1 would not listen to his orders and act on his own. Tai Mo, what's going on? As he spoke, Gui Sha's gaze landed on the black-robed Tai Mo Lord behind him. Tai Mo Lord frowned slightly, his eyes flashing. The moment Mo1 and Buddhist rune moved out together, he'd already guessed that Zhuan might be in this world of yellow fog. My master has returned. Gui Sha. I will also go help Mo1. Tai Mo shook his head and took a step forward. Under Gui Sha's stunned gaze, he also shot out. He joined Mo1 and Buddhist rune to fight Yin Ruhua together. Gui Sha was more and more confused, especially about the master that Tai Mo Lord had mentioned. Just who was this person? Tai Mo and Mo1 were both proud and arrogant people. Gui Sha had wanted to force them to submit to him on the deserted island, but they'd both refused. Now, hearing Tai Mo's master for the first time, how could Gui Sha not be surprised? Master? What kind of person can make Tai Mo recognize him as his master? As he spoke, Gui Sha's cold gaze swept across the crowd. He knew that the master that Tai Mo spoke of was probably hiding in the crowd. With Mo1 Buddhist rune and Tai Mo Lord working together, Yin Ruhua's original advantage was immediately reversed. She even seemed to be at a disadvantage. Damn it! Yin Ruhua cursed in a low voice. Swoosh! A figure suddenly flashed out explosively like a vigorous cheetah, and it instantly tore through space and flashed over to Long Tian's side. Spurt! Spurt! A golden spear swept through the air, and the 4 disciples of the Blue Dragon Hall were pierced through by the spear. Blood spurted out as their heads separated from their bodies. Gurgle! 4 heads immediately rolled on the ground. Blood spurted in the air. It looked extremely terrifying and mournful. Chapter 1480. SS completely exposed 4 streaks of golden light shot into Zhuowen's forehead. Immediately, the 8 golden runes on his forehead began to spread, eventually turning into 9 golden runes. Zhuowen's saintly might became far too terrifying in an instant. He was like a savage beast, vaguely showing signs of suppressing Yin Ruhua. Yin Ruhua felt extremely aggrieved. Mo1 Fo1 and Grand Demonic Lord had joined forces. Their battle prowess was extremely terrifying, vaguely showing signs of suppressing him. Damn it! Yin Ruhua roared. Golden runes shot out from his forehead, forming a huge golden sword. He slashed out with his right hand. The golden light from the sword flickered like stars in the night sky. It was extremely powerful. Thump thump thump. Mo1, Fo1, and Grand Demonic Lord's expressions changed drastically. They stumbled back as shock filled their eyes. They had never thought that Yin Ruhua would be able to unleash such terrifying power, with the power of the golden runes. All 3 of you must die. Yin Ruhua roared at the sky. Like a savage beast, he strode over step by step. The huge golden sword appeared. It was over 30 meters long. Afterwards, Yin Ruhua swung his right hand. The huge sword fell from the sky, smashing towards Mo1, and the others like a mountain of gold. Ding! The moment the golden sword came crashing down, a golden spear shot over and blocked the sword. The crisp sound of metal clashing rang out. The terrifying sword that came crashing down was immediately blocked by the long spear. You! Yin Ruhua's eyes narrowed. He stared coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You're called Wenjua, right? Why are you meddling in my business?" "Meddling in your business?" Zhuowen shook his head and continued, "I'm not meddling in your business. I'm here to take your dog life." Yin Ruhua was an accomplice in the kidnapping of Mu Qinxue. Coupled with what Yin Ruhua had done back then, it would be strange if Zhuowen let him go. "Take my dog life." Yin Ruhua was stunned when he heard that. His blood surged and his eyes spat fire. The young man before him was far too arrogant. He actually dared to say that he would take his dog life. All right, you're dead," Yin Ruhua bellowed. Then, he dashed towards Zhuowen like a giant bird spreading its wings. Zhuowen stood silently, his right hand holding the golden spear tightly as his right foot suddenly stomped on the ground, and he shot out explosively like an arrow that had left the bow. Boom! The 2 of them brushed past each other, and the golden spear and sword collided, erupting with a blazing golden light. Ding ding ding! The speed of the 2 was extremely fast. They were like 2 phantoms as they clashed with each other. Strange and clear sounds of clanging and clanging erupted in the sky. Every time they collided, an extremely terrifying power would erupt and spread out. Go and destroy Qing Longzi's breakthrough. With a thought, Zhuowen's Buddhist and Devil Dao clones instantly shot out explosively. They split into 2 directions and flashed towards Qing Longzi, who was sitting cross-legged on the rock. Not good. Yin Ruhua's gaze changed. He had also noticed Zhuowen and Mo1. Just as he was about to turn around and attack, Zhuowen's spear had already arrived and heavily smashed onto Yin Ruhua's body. Puff! Yin Ruhua spat out a mouthful of blood and immediately fell from the sky, heavily smashing onto the ground. Swoosh swoosh! The moment Yin Ruhua fell to the ground, Mo1 and Buddha Dao clones had unknowingly flown out and smashed onto the ground not far away from Zhuowen. "Zhuowen, I think that you shouldn't be too arrogant. Do you think that I don't know your identity?" An indifferent voice slowly rang out. At this moment, Qing Longzi's eyes were filled with indifference as he walked over step by step with an expressionless face. "Zhuowen? This one Zhuo is Zhuowen?" As soon as Qing Longzi's words came out, not only were the numerous participants in the Yellow Fog world stunned, even the other participants and leaders of the 9 Netherworld realm on the 9 large square platforms in the outside world. Although many people in the 9 Netherworld realm had never seen Zhuowen's true appearance, they had all heard of his name. In fact, Zhuowen's name was extremely resounding in the 9 Netherworld realm. Just the fact that he possessed a celestial saint artifact was enough to tempt anyone in the 9 Netherworld realm. This kid is actually Zhuowen. When Zhuo is Zhuowen, this kid might really be Zhuowen. This kid is really bold to actually dare to come to the 9 Netherworld assembly. Elder Raiwa narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Sapphire Shore was much calmer. He had already guessed Zhuowen's identity long ago, but he didn't say it out loud. Zhuowen, this little bastard really came. Wu Hou clenched his fists tightly and said in a low voice. Just one sentence from Qing Longzi was not enough to convince everyone. However, when they thought about how Wen Zhua and Zhuowen's names had only changed in order, everyone immediately believed him. Especially the saints of the 5 great secluded realms who had joined forces with Zhou Tianzong to attack Zhuowen. Because from the performance of the second stage, this Wen Zhua had always been looking for trouble with the disciples of the 5 great powers. And he basically didn't leave anyone alive. If he didn't have any enmity with the 5 great powers, Wen Zhuo wouldn't have repeatedly targeted the 5 great powers like this. Not only Wu Hou, many other martial warriors from the Nether Realm also started to become restless. Who didn't want a celestial saint artifact? However, because Chao Rong was currently in control of the 9 Netherworld Sky platform, those restless martial warriors did not dare to act rashly. Zhuowen really came. What should we do now? On the square platform of the divine Nether Realm, Xiao Yu frowned as he stared at Yan Ji and the other two and asked. Sigh. Zhuowen really came to participate in the 9 Nether Assembly. This is going to be troublesome. Jiang Xian said somewhat helplessly. Martial Uncle Yanji, what should we do? Xiao Yu's gaze fell on Yanji as he asked somewhat pleadingly. After all, Zhuowen was a disciple of their mysterious origin peak, and he was the second kid after Yuanji to comprehend the laws of the void. Xiao Yu really didn't want Zhuowen to fall just like that. Let's wait and see. Right now, the 9 Nether Assembly is still ongoing, so the others don't dare to act rashly. We'll make a decision after the 9 Nether Assembly ends. Yanji shook his head and sighed. He was very clear how tempting the Immortal Saint artifact on Zhuowen's body was. Once the 9 Nether Assembly ended, most of the martial warriors in the 9 great secluded realms would pounce towards Zhuowen like hungry wolves, in order to obtain the Immortal Saint artifact on the former's body and soar into the sky. Hearing Yanji's reply, Xiao Yu frowned, but there was nothing he could do. Xiao Yu was also clear that if their divine academy really helped Zhuowen, they would undoubtedly be surrounded and annihilated by countless martial warriors from the other 8 great secluded realms. Zhuowen! Lu Hantian suddenly rushed out and arrived in front of Zhuowen. Are you really Zhuowen? Zhuowen knew that his identity had been exposed, so he removed his disguise and returned to his original appearance. Lu Hantian's gaze relaxed, but he immediately said solemnly, Why did you come to the 9 Nether Assembly? It's not like you don't know your situation. The entire 9 Nether Realm is eyeing you covetously. Seeing the concern in Lu Hantian's eyes, Zhuowen's heart warmed. He shook his head and said, Big brother Hantian, don't worry. The reason I came to the 9 Nether Assembly this time is to become a saint. Once I become a saint, even if I am not a match for the 9 Nether Realm, escaping will not be a problem. Lu Hantian was startled. He never thought that Zhuowen would be so confident. Facing countless martial warriors from the 9 great secluded realms, he had the confidence to escape. It was truly inconceivable. Could it be? Lu Hantian's eyes lit up, as if he had thought of something. Zhuowen nodded his head and sent a sound transmission. I have already completely refined the Azure Dragon Palace. Once I become a saint, I will be able to freely control the Azure Dragon Palace. Even Sapphire Shore will not be able to stop me. Now I hope that Big Brother Hantian can help me with this. I hope that all the disciples of the 5 great powers will be annihilated in the 3rd stage. Haha. Don't worry, your big brother will definitely help you. Lu Hantian laughed and readily agreed. Tap tap tap. Qing Longzi walked over step by step and said to the surrounding people in a clear voice, Everyone should know about Zhuowen, right? Back then, this person's name was spread all over the 9 Nether Realm. I'm sure everyone is clearly aware of what treasures this kid possesses. I won't beat around the bush. This kid hasn't become a saint yet, so he's utterly unable to bring out the might of such treasures. It's simply a waste for him to possess them. Why don't we join forces and kill this kid, then split everything on him equally? As for the treasure, it will depend on our strength. Whoever can snatch it will get it. As soon as these words were spoken, The geniuses of the other secluded realms, who had gathered around, all became restless. Qinglongzi is right. This kid has no power or influence. How can he be qualified to possess a saint artifact? Let's snatch it. Shazi was the first to agree. I agree with Qinglongzi, Yiksha said concisely. Haha. I can see that everyone is quite interested. As a woman, I naturally have no objections. The flower fairy giggled. Guisha narrowed his eyes and stared at Mo1 and Taimo. This Zhuowen is the master of the two of you? Now I'll give the two of you a chance. Follow me and kill this kid, and I'll absolve you of your crimes. You'll still be disciples of the deserted island. Mo1 couldn't be bothered with Guisha, while Taimo Lord shook his head. Thank you for your kindness, senior brother Guisha, but we've decided to follow master's footsteps. Ignorant fool, I gave you face but you don't want it. Later, I'll kill you too, Guisha said coldly. Qinglongzi smiled and looked at Yang Yi and Yunran. These two represented the divine nether realm and the demon nether realm respectively. Brother Yang Yi, sister Yunran, what do you think of my suggestion? Before Yang Yi could speak, Jianan, who was beside him, cursed. Who do you think you are? We don't need you to tell us what to do. Brother Zhua is a disciple of the Divine Nether Academy. Even if you beat us to death, we won't do anything to him. Gatha, Mo Yin Wushang, Fu Yu and the others all nodded seriously. Obviously, they wouldn't wallow in the mire with Qinglongzi. Qinglongzi wasn't angry. He looked at Yang Yi and asked, Brother Yang Yi, what do you think? Chapter 1481. Encirclement and Suppression. Yang Yi, who had a lazy personality, suddenly uttered such crude words, causing the surrounding people to be stunned. Even Qinglongzi's face had stiffened on the spot, and his face was alternating between red and green. Yang Yi didn't pay any attention to Qinglongzi at all. He just led a few people from Divine Academy to Zhuowen's side. Jianan, Gatha, and Moyan Wushang were on good terms with Zhuowen, so they moved to Zhuowen's side. Zhuowen, you really are a troublemaker. Now you've offended the entire 9th Netherworld realm. Amazing. Yang Yi secretly gave Zhuowen a thumbs up and grinned. That look of his was very cunning. Zhuowen said gratefully, Thank you for your help, senior brother Yang Yi. It's nothing. We're both disciples of Divine Academy. So how can I, as your eldest senior brother, stand by idly when you're being bullied? Don't you think so? Yang Yi waved his hand. Humph. Qinglongzi snorted coldly, and then his gaze descended onto Yunran. He said, Sister Yunran, I presume your demon nether realm wants the immortal saint artifact as well. Why don't you join us? Senior sister. Wu Dai grabbed the corner of Yunran's clothes tightly and spoke in a slightly nervous manner. Yunran's beautiful eyes flashed slightly, and she said indifferently, Qinglongzi, our demon nether realm won't participate in this matter. Don't try to drag our demon god palace down with you. Qinglongzi frowned slightly. He was slightly surprised by Yunran's attitude. However, Wu Dai's expression changed slightly, and she said coquettishly, Senior sister, didn't you promise me that you would help Zhuowen? Yunran shook her head and said, The other nether realms are targeting Zhuowen right now, so we shouldn't get involved in this mess. Wu Dai's beautiful eyes dimmed, and she said coldly, If you won't help, then I will. As she spoke, Wu Dai took a step forward and shot out like a graceful butterfly. She instantly arrived by Zhuowen's side. Would he come back? Yunran's beautiful eyes changed slightly. She followed Wu Dai and arrived at Zhuowen's place. Her pretty face was filled with shock and anger. I won't go with you. I want to fight alongside Master. Wu Dai coldly snorted. You is he your master? Yunran was startled and stared at Zhuowen with some annoyance. When the others saw this scene, their eyes narrowed. This Zhuowen really wasn't simple. First, the desolate nether realms Taimo and Mo had recognized him as their master. Now the demon nether realm's rising star, Wu Dai, was also calling Zhuowen master. You stubborn lass. Yunran was so angry that she stomped her foot. Her pretty eyes flickered before she waved her hand and summoned the other demon serene realm disciples over. They then landed within the encirclement around Zhuowen. Fine, fine, fine. Today, I'll help you out for Wu Dai's sake, but this won't happen again. Yin Ran's beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen with extreme hostility, causing Zhuowen to touch his nose a little awkwardly. This Yin Ran was tall and beautiful. Being stared at by such a great beauty, a trace of embarrassment rose in Zhuowen's heart. Qing Longzi's face immediately darkened. Originally, it was best if Yin Ran didn't care about this matter. Now that she had to help Zhuowen because of Wu Dai, Qing Longzi was naturally unhappy. Humph. You're overestimating yourselves. You think the divine nether realm and demon nether realm can protect this little bastard? Let me tell you, although this kid has a saint artifact, he can't even open a spirit ring here. In other words, this kid won't have a chance to use the saint artifact. You're simply courting death by following him, Qing Longzi said coldly. Do you know that you talk a lot of nonsense? Zhuowen said indifferently. Qing Longzi's face froze. Then he laughed out of extreme anger. Good. You said it yourself. Today you and everyone related to you will die. Attack! Qing Longzi shouted angrily. 10 golden runes shot out from between his eyebrows and formed a giant golden dragon. The giant golden dragon soared into the sky and turned into a dragon head broadsword. He held it in his hand with terrifying might. Whoosh! 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 The moment Qing Longzi attacked, Yin Ruhua followed closely behind. Flower Fairy, Yiksha, Shazi and Gui Sha brought their respective disciples and rushed over. Leave Qing Longzi to me. You guys be careful. After Yang Yi finished speaking, he took a step forward and rushed towards Qing Longzi alone. 9 golden runes appeared between his eyebrows and finally formed a giant rod. Boom! 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 Yang Yi swung the long rod and countless rod shadows filled the sky. They were like natural strong winds and looked extremely terrifying. Qing Longzi snorted coldly and slashed out with his dragon head broadsword. The blade radiance was as dense as stars and swept towards the sky. Suddenly, the countless rod shadows collapsed inch by inch. Yang Yi, your ranking in the 9 nether realm has always been lower than mine. You're no match for me. Qing Longzi stood proudly and sneered at Yang Yi from the corner of his eyes. Oh, if my ranking is lower than yours, then so be it. Since you like fame so much, it's only right for you to be number 1. Yang Yi said indifferently. You're courting death. Yang Yi's words were full of sarcasm. Qing Longzi's face suddenly darkened. He took a step forward and continued to rush towards Yang Yi like an arrow released from a bow. Yang Yi, on the other hand, did not have the slightest bit of fear. He had the attitude of block soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. When Qing Longzi swept in front of him, he repeatedly smashed out with his long staff, forming a dense staff shadow attack. The moment Yang Yi and Qing Longzi fought, the others also swarmed over and attacked Zhuowen and the others. This Zhuowen is mine. None of you fight with me. Shazi was the first to arrive and shouted at the others. Shazi, you're not being kind. Whether this Zhuowen is yours or not is not up to you. Just give him to me, Yiksha said coldly. This boy is mine. If you dare to fight for him, don't blame me, Gui Sha, for being impolite, Gui Sha said. Haha, the 3 of you don't have to fight. Just give this boy to me, okay? I won't mistreat you after this. Flower Fairy's bell-like laughter rang out. She stared at the other 3 with a pair of charming eyes that seemed to be able to melt ice. However, Shazi, Yiksha, and Gui Sha turned a blind eye to Flower Fairy's charm. Their attitude was cold, which made Flower Fairy's pretty face stiffen. Zhuowen looked on coldly, watching Shazi and the other 3 haggling, as if he was a persimmon that they could pinch at will. As for the rest of Zhuowen's people, they had already joined the battle and fought with the other disciples of the Nether Realm. The power of Saint Fate constantly exploded around them. It was extremely terrifying. The 4 of you don't have to fight. This boy is mine, Yin Ruhua. I'll make him suffer. While Shazi, Yiksha, Gui Sha, and Flower Fairy were arguing about Zhuowen, Yin Ruhua stepped forward and said coldly. As soon as Yin Ruhua arrived, the 4 of them narrowed their eyes. Gui Sha said coldly, Yin Ruhua, your appetite is too big. Are you sure you can deal with this boy? What does it have to do with you? Yin Ruhua said bluntly. Her tone directly angered Gui Sha, but he didn't lose his mind and fight with Yin Ruhua. After all, their target this time was Zhuowen. You don't have to fight. The 5 of you can come at me together. Suddenly, Zhuowen walked forward slowly and said coldly to Yin Ruhua and the other 4. What? You want the 5 of us to come at you together? Yin Ruhua picked her ear, as if she had heard the biggest joke. Even Gui Sha and the other 3 had a strange expression. Zhuowen was crazy. He dared to fight the 5 of them alone. I think you're scared out of your wits, right? You want the 5 of us to come at you together? You're overestimating yourself, hee. Shazi laughed strangely and immediately stepped into the void. He immediately used his assassination technique and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already behind Zhuowen, holding a golden dagger in his hand. This golden dagger was the weapon that the golden tattoo on Shazi's forehead materialized. You're dead. Shazi licked his lips and his eyes were filled with violence. He was sure that with this dagger, Zhuowen's heart would be completely shattered. Ding! However, when his dagger finally pierced Zhuowen's back, there was a crisp sound of metal clashing. Then, he felt as if his dagger had stabbed into a hard rock. It didn't move. This guy's body, how can it be so tough? Shazi's mouth slowly opened, and his eyes were covered by a layer of darkness. Realizing that something was wrong, he quickly withdrew his hand and tried to leave. However, it was too late. Zhuowen's right hand reached out and grabbed Shazi's right hand that was holding the dagger. At this moment, Zhuowen no longer held back the power of the divine body. Although the power of the divine body was still suppressed here, he could still use part of its power. With this power, it was more than enough to kill Shazi. Crack! Zhuowen suddenly exerted force and Shazi's right hand directly shattered. Then, Zhuowen suddenly pulled Shazi and Shazi involuntarily flew toward Zhuowen. Boom! Zhuowen clenched his right fist and fiercely punched Shazi's chest. The terrifying power spread out and Shazi suddenly trembled and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, Shazi's body began to crack under this huge power and shattered into countless pieces of blood. At this moment, Gui Sha, Flower Fairy, Yiksha, and Yin Ruhua were all stunned. Shazi was the #1 genius of the League of Assassins. His assassination technique was unparalleled in the world. Now, he had been killed by Zhuowen in one move. This was too fast. This guy, his body is so terrifying. Flower Fairy's teeth chattered. I said that the 5 of you should come at me together. You shouldn't discuss who should go first. After killing Shazi, strands of golden light entered Zhuowen's glabella. This caused the golden rune between Zhuowen's eyebrows to faintly show signs of growing to the 10th one. At the same time, Zhuowen's eyes locked onto Yin Ruhua and the other 3. He licked his lips, and a bloodthirsty impulse appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1482. 12 golden runes. Now that the 9 golden runes of Saint Luck had entered his body, Zhuowen's comprehension of the laws had reached an unprecedented level. 10 golden runes. Licking his lips, Zhuowen's gaze locked onto Yin Ruhua, Flower Fairy, Yiksha and Gui Sha. These 4 had quite a number of golden patterns on their bodies. As long as he could kill one of them, he could reach 10 golden patterns. Feeling Zhuowen's cold gaze, the 4 of them felt a chill in their hearts. What kind of gaze was that? With such a gaze, they were already completely treating them as prey. Although it didn't feel good to be treated like prey, Yin Ruhua and the others didn't feel angry. Instead, they felt cold and scared. What are you afraid of? If the 4 of us join forces, no matter how heaven-defying he is, he won't be a match for us, Yin Ruhua said to the Flower Fairy and the others. Brother Hua is right. Just now, I was careless in killing my son, and allowed Zhuowen to grab hold of me. Thus I was instantly killed. As long as we work together and deal with him cautiously, there is no need to fear him. Gui Sha laughed coldly. Yiksha was also inspired by Yin Ruhua's words and said, I agree with Brother Ruhua. No one has any objections. I'm just a girl, so I naturally don't have any objections. The Flower Fairy giggled and agreed. Zhuowen stood there quietly and said indifferently, Don't you think you're talking too much? Since you want to join forces, then join forces to deal with me. Why are you being so hesitant? Hearing that, Yin Ruhua and the others were stunned. Zhuowen's words were arrogant and even arrogant. You're acting recklessly. Let's join forces and kill him. Yin Ruhua said coldly. Yin Ruhua's eyes were cold. As he spoke, he suddenly swung the golden sword in his hand. Countless golden sword shadows shot out. Yin Ruhua followed the golden sword shadows and descended from the sky, targeting Zhuo. Guisha, Yiksha and Flower Fairy didn't want to be outdone. They followed behind Yin Ruhua, and Saint Lux surrounded them. Guisha's weapon was a ring covered in spikes. Yiksha's weapon was a 3-meter-long trident. Flower Fairy's weapon was a palm-sized golden lotus. Shameless, Moyan Wushang, Kanan and Gatha, who were fighting on the other side, saw this scene and their expressions changed slightly. They could not help but curse out loud. However, although the three of them wanted to help Zhuo, they were powerless and were held back by the others. Do you need my help? The expressionless Jian Mu sent a voice transmission to Zhuo as he held his sword in his right hand and slashed out horizontally, forcing back several disciples of the other factions who had surrounded him. Facing Zhuo, Jian Mu's feelings were extremely complicated. He even felt a little guilty. When Mu Qinxue was taken away by the Burning Heaven sect, he did not step forward. In fact, he already knew that the Burning Heaven sect would come to take away Mu Qinxue. However, Old Man Tiandu had stopped him, and he had considered the bigger picture, so he did not step forward. However, Zhuo had stepped forward. He was enraged and stood up to face the Saint of the Burning Heaven sect. That battle had shaken the entire 9th Netherworld realm. Thinking of Zhuo's unparalleled majesty, Jian Mu did not know why, but he felt a little guilty. In terms of feelings, he was not as good as Zhuo. He could feel that Zhuo's love for Mu Qinxue was absolutely beyond everyone's imagination. Zhuo glanced at Jian Mu and shook his head. He did not say anything. Obviously, he did not need Jian Mu's help. Then you be careful. Jian Mu nodded. His eyes were emotionless as he slashed out with his right hand. Sword shadows filled the sky as he continued to deal with the other martial artists. Whoosh! The moment the conversation ended, Yin Ruhua had already arrived in front of Zhuo. Countless sword shadows fell like raindrops, descending in front of Zhuo. The incomparably sharp sword intent seemed to be able to cut through the stars. Its power was terrifying, and its momentum was terrifying. Rumble! Zhuo punched out. Golden veins flashed around his body like a pulse. It looked extremely strange. With this punch, the countless sword shadows in front of him were directly dispersed. The terrifying fist momentum did not change. Taking advantage of the victory, it blasted towards Yin Ruhua. Slash! Yin Ruhua was awe-inspiring and fearless. He raised his golden sword above his head and smashed it down fiercely. It contained a great force that seemed to be able to break the heavenly Tao. Bang! Zhuo still punched out. This punch was like a hard iron rock. It smashed onto the golden sword. Immediately, Yin Ruhua's right hand trembled violently and even twitched. Thump! 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 Yin Ruhua retreated dozens of steps. His right hand could not help but tremble. Then, he was shocked to find that the golden sword was covered with cracks like a spider web. On the other hand, Zhuo's fist only had a white mark. This was too terrifying. Whoosh! 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 Die! The moment Yin Ruhua retreated, 3 figures were like vigorous leopards. They came from 3 different directions and stabbed towards Zhuo's vital points. Zhuo floated in the air, his mind radiating outwards. He was paying attention to the 3 people who were suddenly rushing towards him. His mind was raised to an extremely sharp level. Yiksha was on the right. He grinned maliciously and thrust his golden trident towards Zhuo's ribs. Guisha was on the left. He held a spiked ring in his hand. Golden light rose slowly and stabbed towards Zhuo's heart. The flower fairy was directly behind Zhuo. Her blooming golden lotus split into 10 petals. 10 petals flew out and turned into 10 golden hidden weapons. They swept towards Zhuo's back. The 3 people attacked as soon as they came. This made Zhuo's eyes become extremely cold, and even contained a trace of terrifying murderous intent. Boom! Zhuo snorted coldly. His left and right hands clenched into fists. He immediately punched towards Yiksha and Guisha. As for behind him, Zhuo mobilized the power of the holy body. Threads of golden veins densely covered Zhuo's back. forming an extremely tough golden defense. Crack! His left and right fists hit Wuxia and Guisha's weapons at the same time. Whether it was Wuxia's trident or Guisha's spiked ring, they were like paper. They crumbled inch by inch and turned into countless golden light spots. The power of his fists did not change at all. They continued to move forward and heavily hit the two people. However, Wuxia and Guisha were extremely cunning. Zhuowen's fists were punching towards both sides at the same time, so there was a limit to the distance his fists could travel. The moment the two of them realized that their weapons were all broken, they quickly retreated. It was scary but not dangerous, and they dodged Zhuowen's attack. The moment Zhuowen's attack missed, the flower fairy's 10 petals had already descended and landed on Zhuowen's back. The flower fairy's jade-like hand formed a seal. The lotus that had lost its petals transformed into a long golden needle. The flower fairy's jade-like hand formed a long needle. She stepped forward and followed the petals. In an instant she was behind Zhuowen. She reached out with her jade-like hand. The long golden needle followed her power and accurately landed on Zhuowen's back. Ding! 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 The sound of metal hitting metal rang out. The 10 petals landed on Zhuowen's back, but they were unable to break through the skin. The 10 petals were like fallen leaves. They fell to the ground behind Zhuowen. Ding! The flower fairy's expression changed slightly. Her delicate body had already arrived. The long needle pierced through the void and accurately landed on Zhuowen's back. How is this possible? The long needle formed by the lotus was terrifyingly sharp. It could easily pierce through metal and crack stone. Such a divine needle could not pierce through Zhuowen's back. What kind of monster was this guy? His body was as tough as the toughest rock. While the flower fairy was in a daze, Zhuowen's right hand shot out like a fan and grabbed the flower fairy's jade-like hand. You! Let go of me! The flower fairy's expression changed slightly. Zhuowen's hand strength was terrifying. It was as if she was being held by an iron hoop. She could not break free even if she wanted to. Let go of you! Zhuowen sneered. He did not care about the flower fairy's words. His right hand formed a sword finger and pointed directly at the flower fairy's forehead. The flower fairy was devastatingly beautiful. Coupled with her faintly discernible charm, it was enough to make all living things fall for her. However, Zhuowen was unmoved. As long as someone threatened his life, he would not let them off easily. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Don't kill me. I can swear that I will be your maid and serve you for the rest of my life. The fear of death caused the flower fairy to no longer have any misgivings, and she even revealed a hint of seduction, hoping that Zhuowen would stop. Not interested, Zhuowen was not moved at all. The golden sword finger flashed and instantly pierced the flower fairy's forehead. Puchi! Red blood flowed down from the flower fairy's forehead. The flower fairy's beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen. Her aura had completely disappeared. She died with her eyes wide open. Whoosh! The moment the flower fairy died, the 7 golden runes on her body peeled off and entered Zhuowen's forehead. In an instant, the 9 golden lines on Zhuowen's forehead exploded with a terrifying golden light. It was as if there was a small sun in Zhuowen's forehead. Then, the 9th golden line began to form the 10th golden line. Moreover, the golden lines did not show any signs of stopping. More golden lines were formed, and 2 more golden lines were formed. In the end, the 12th golden line was formed on Zhuowen's forehead. A terrifying saint's aura soared into the sky. The yellow fog that filled the sky above the yellow fog world was dispersed by this terrifying saint's aura. The others who were fighting stopped fighting and stared blankly at Zhuowen. They did not speak for a long time. The surrounding people also saw the killers and flower fairies' corpses. After a moment of silence, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The flower fairy and the killer are both dead. They were both killed by this Zhuowen. This is too terrifying. At this moment, Zhuowen was like a god that had descended to the mortal world. He floated in the air. The 12 golden lines on his forehead intersected with each other. They looked blazing and terrifying. At the same time, he attracted the gazes of countless warriors in the yellow fog world. Is this guy going to break through? Qing Longzi and Yang Yi separated. Qing Longzi's face was ugly as he looked at Zhuowen's figure floating in the air. Chapter 1483. About to break through rumble. The saint luck around Zhuowen grew more and more terrifying. The golden light shot into the sky and dyed the entire sky golden yellow. The dense yellow mist in the surroundings was dispersed by the terrifying golden light. The ground began to tremble violently, as if something was about to break out of the ground. How terrifying! Zhuowen is about to break through. The abnormality of the yellow mist world naturally attracted the attention of the leaders of the various forces on the 9 square platforms outside the 9th underworld sky platform. Their gazes passed through the layers of yellow mist and landed on Zhuowen, who was covered in golden light. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. The flower fairy and the assassin are both dead. Bai Meisheng, the leader of the 100 Flowers Park, and the leader of the Assassin League, the Imperial Exterminator, had ugly expressions. Although they couldn't see clearly due to the yellow mist, the words representing the flower fairy and the assassin on the light screen above the 9th underworld sky platform had completely dimmed. It was Zhuowen who killed them. Bai Meisheng and the Imperial Exterminator's eyes were filled with cold murderous intent as they spoke in a low voice. Zhuowen, the undying old monster, the leader of the undying sacred altar, and the leader of the sacred martial sect, Wu Ho, also had cold gazes as they stared at the figure covered in golden light, as if they were about to devour him. The top genius of the undying sacred altar, Shueisha, and the genius of the sacred martial sect, Wu Zhantian, had both been killed by Zhuowen. The two of them couldn't wait to tear out Zhuowen's tendons and bones. Swallow him alive. However, they couldn't do it now. The 9th underworld sky platform was controlled by Chao Rong, and there were powerful restrictions around it. Even a heavenly saint would find it difficult to break into the 9th underworld sky platform by force. Therefore, they were all waiting for the 9th underworld convention to end. Once the 9th underworld convention ended, Zhuowen would become the target of everyone. He's about to become a heavenly saint. This guy must be stopped. Qing Longzi's eyes were dark as he shouted coldly. He took a step forward and slashed out with the dragon-head broadsword in his hand. Boundless saint force spread out and formed a huge dragon. The giant dragon roared and shot toward Zhuowen like an arrow. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed and formed countless black holes. Yang Yi, who was originally lazy, narrowed his eyes. He stepped on the air and swung his long staff. His staff blasted out, forming a dense staff shadow. These staff shadows gathered together to form a huge golden staff that was thousands of feet long. It came crashing down from the sky and smashed into the huge dragon. Rumble! An earth-shattering sound rang out. The sky of the yellow fog world was completely torn apart by this terrifying energy, like a piece of cloth that had been cut open by a knife. The cultivators nearby all retreated, their eyes filled with fear as they stared at the two people fighting in the sky. Why is Yang Yi's strength so terrifying? Wasn't it said that Qing Longzi was the strongest in the 9 netherworld realm? Why is Qing Longzi on par with Yang Yi? Below, countless cultivators were in an uproar, their eyes filled with awe. In the sky, Yang Yi was holding a golden staff, while Qing Longzi was holding a dragon-head broadsword. The two of them continued to exchange blows on the gigantic golden dragon. They were like two blurry shadows. Every time they collided, a portion of the surrounding space would be shattered to pieces. Boom, boom, boom. In just a few dozen rounds, the huge golden dragon was completely blown into golden powder by the aftermath of the battle between the two. At this moment, the entire yellow fog world was covered in a strange golden rain. Yang Yi, you've hidden your strength well. I didn't expect your strength to be so terrifying. Qing Longzi narrowed his eyes and stared at Yang Yi, who was holding a long staff in front of him, and said coldly. Yang Yi smiled faintly, but he didn't show any complacency. He yawned and said, I advise you not to find trouble with Zhuowen. Let him break through smoothly. We can just wait here. Fighting here, and there is just a waste of energy. Hearing this, Qing Longzi's face darkened, and he said in a low voice, Those who block me will die. As he spoke, Qing Longzi was like an angry dragon. He stepped into the void, and the golden rune between his eyebrows emitted a blazing golden light. Countless golden dragon shadows floated under his feet. Qing Longzi was the first person to reach 10 golden runes. The power of Saint Fate in his body was extremely powerful, while Yang Yi only had 9 golden runes. Even so, Yang Yi still managed to intercept Qing Longzi. Kill him! Yen Ruhua was the first to react. He shouted at Yiksha and Guisha, who were stunned on the other side. Kill! Yiksha and Guisha nodded. Immediately, they stepped on the empty air and rushed towards Zhuo, who was still in the midst of breaking through, in a pincer attack manner like 2 sharp arrows. As for Yen Ruhua, he followed behind the two, his eyes filled with killing intent. Oh no! Brother Zhuo is breaking through. We can't let him be disturbed. Wu Dai's face changed slightly. The thin wings on her back opened and closed, and she quickly disappeared like a gust of wind. When she reappeared, she was already in front of Zhuo. With a wave of her hand, 7 golden runes flew out from between her eyebrows and turned into a golden whip. Boom! Boom! The golden whip swept out, and the shadow of the whip filled the sky. Wu Dai did not attack. Instead, she used the shadow of the whip to form an extremely tough defense. The moment Wu Dai arrived, MO1 and FO1's clones also landed beside Wu Dai. Whether it was MO1 or FO1, they both held golden Buddhist commandment blades. FO1 was surrounded by Buddhist light, while MO1's demonic chi soared into the sky. The two of them had a tacit understanding. They crossed their blades and took a defensive stance. You're courting death. Yen Ruhua arrived in an instant, and his golden sword smashed down, causing the void to explode. The power of the sword had shattered the void. Crack. The defensive stance formed by Wu Dai, MO1, and FO1 completely collapsed under the sword. The three of them spat out mouthfuls of blood and retreated. Hold on! Jianmu blasted away the opponent in front of him. Surrounded by sword shadows, he stepped on his sword and blocked in front of Wu Dai and the other two. His sword aura soared into the sky, like a god or a demon. Clang! The two long swords clashed. Jianmu retreated dozens of steps, while Yen Ruhua retreated a few steps. Jianmu of Fine God Academy, you have 8 golden runes? Yen Ruhua's eyes narrowed as he stared at the young man, with a sword in front of him. Jianmu was not famous in the 9th Netherworld realm, but in recent years, he had suddenly risen. Although Jianmu's cultivation was only at the sage-to-be level, he had comprehended the law of ruthlessness, coupled with his powerful and exquisite swordsmanship. In addition, he was a sword cultivator himself. His offensive skills were unparalleled in the world. Although he was only at the sage-to-be level, Jianmu had defeated a Void Arcane Saint Realm Saint. His combat strength was extremely terrifying. In the world of Yellow Fog, everyone's origin energy, mind power, power of law, and even spiritual rings could not be used. Everyone's starting point was the same. However, Jianmu was different. Although he could not use the law of ruthlessness or origin energy, his exquisite swordsmanship was extremely powerful. Here, his combat strength was displayed to the greatest extent. Jianmu only had 6 golden runes earlier, but in this short moment, he had killed 7 or 8 people in a row. The saint luck he had obtained had caused the golden runes between his eyebrows to evolve from 6 to 8. His saint aura was vast and mighty. Jianmu, how dare you stop me? Yen Ruhua's eyes were cold as he stared at the expressionless young man, holding a long sword in front of him. Why wouldn't I? Jianmu stood in front of Yen Ruhua and spat out such a sentence. His battle intent soared to the sky. Good. I said that those who block me will die. Yen Ruhua snorted coldly and stepped out. His speed soared to the extreme, like a stream of light. Jianmu was awe-inspiring, but he was not afraid. His sword chi soared to the sky and turned into 10,000 swords. Jianmu's offensive swordsmanship was displayed to the extreme. Countless sword shadows formed around him, as if forming a sword defense. Ding! Ding! Yen Ruhua's sword was extremely heavy. Every move of his seemed to contain the power of 10,000 caddies. On the other hand, Jianmu's sword was as light as the wind. However, if they were to collide, the killing intent contained within would be fatal. The two swords bombarded each other in the void, bursting with power that could collapse space. The countless sword shadows dazzled many martial artists. Let's go! The moment Yen Ruhua and Jianmu fought, Yuxia and Guisha looked at each other and continued to rush toward Zhuowen. However, the moment they were about to reach Zhuowen, they were intercepted by two figures. Mo1, how dare you stop me? If you get out of the way and let me kill Zhuowen, I can ask the island master to let you back into the deserted island. In the future, you will still be a part of the deserted island and the desolate nether realm. Guisha stared at Mo1 and said in a low voice. On the other side, Yuxia was blocked by the Buddhist text and could not touch Zhuowen at all. Fight! Amitba, this path is blocked. Mo1 and the Buddhist text each gave their own answer. Then they burst out with their own battle strength and rushed toward Guisha and Yuxia. For a moment, the shock waves of the battle spread out in all directions like ripples in water. The entire yellow fog world became somewhat chaotic. As the fuse of this battle, Zhuowen was floating quietly in the air. His body was wrapped in Saint Luck. Ice, fire, void, desolation, death. Zhuowen closed his eyes and murmured. These four were the power of laws in his body. He knew that if he wanted to become a true saint, he had to integrate these 5 laws into his own saint power. At this moment, the golden Saint Luck around him poured into Zhuowen's body. This Saint Luck followed Zhuowen's meridians and entered his dantian. Under the effect of the Saint Luck, the Yuanli in his dantian began to gradually transform into golden saint power. When Zhuowen's dantian was completely dyed golden, Zhuowen knew that the power in his dantian would no longer be called Yuanli but saint power. This was much more powerful than Yuanli. It was a power that only saints could have. Next, I have to summon my own laws and integrate them into saint power. Then I can become a saint. Chapter 1484. Yenruhua's Death Ice. Zhuowen growled as he opened his right eye. His right eye was filled with an icy blue color that contained the coldness of 1,000-year-old black ice. The law of ice lingered around it. Fuse. Zhuowen placed his right hand in front of his right eye. Wisps of the law of ice gushed out from his right eye and gathered in Zhuowen's palm. The moment the law of ice surged into Zhuowen's palm, Zhuowen controlled the law of ice in his palm and drilled it into his palm. It then flowed through the meridians in his palm and went deep into Zhuowen's body. The bone-chilling coldness flowed through Zhuowen's meridians and gathered in Zhuowen's dantian, like rivers flowing into the sea. Under the effect of the saint energy in his dantian, the law of ice gathered into an octahedral icy blue crystal. If Zhuowen wanted to mobilize the saint energy, he could mobilize the law of ice from the icy blue crystal and integrate it with the saint energy to unleash the terrifying power of the ice saint energy. Fire. When the ice elemental precepts had completely fused with his dantian, Zhuowen opened his fire eye and absorbed the fire elemental precepts into his body. The fire elemental precepts flowed through his meridians and finally gathered in his dantian, forming a flame. The integration of the law of ice and the law of fire was extremely smooth. This guy has both the law of ice and the law of fire? When Zhuowen displayed the law of ice and the law of fire and integrated it into the saint energy in his dantian, it naturally did not escape the attention of the people around him. This guy has both the law of ice and the law of fire. In addition to the law of desolation from before, this guy has 3 laws on him? Qing Longzi took a few steps back as his gaze fell on Zhuowen. Especially when he saw the shadow of ice and fire behind Zhuowen, his expression turned ugly. He knew that during the battle for the Saint Luck, Zhuowen had used the law of desolation in his battle with Shueisha. In addition to the law of ice and the law of fire, he now had 3 laws on him. To be able to comprehend 3 laws, he was definitely a monster in the 9th netherworld realm. If such a monster could become a saint, his combat strength would become extremely terrifying. The other martial warriors also stared blankly at this scene, unable to speak for a long time. Desolation. Under the gazes of countless people, Zhuowen once again extracted the law of desolation. Afterwards, he cautiously sent the power of the law of desolation through his meridians and into his dantian. As expected, the 3rd law is the law of desolation. Qing Longzi's eyes were gloomy, and his heart was heavy. He was the number 1 genius of the Dragon Wasteland, and the undisputed number 1 in the entire 9 netherworld realm. This was not only because of his cultivation realm, but also because he had comprehended 3 types of laws. Comprehending 2 types of laws was already considered a genius among geniuses. Comprehending 3 types of laws was definitely a 1 in a million existence. Qing Longzi even relied on 3 types of laws to defy the heavens and become a saint. This made his combat strength almost invincible among the younger generation. If it wasn't for the strangeness of this yellow fog world, Qing Longzi might be able to display an extremely heaven-defying battle strength. Even Yang Yi might not be able to stop him. Void! While everyone was still in shock, Zhuowen's indifferent voice rang out again. As soon as his voice fell, countless martial warriors around the yellow fog world froze, their gazes converging on Zhuowen. Aside from ice, fire, and desolation, this kid actually has a 4th law? Qing Longzi felt as if a large piece of walnut had been stuffed into his throat, and he was unable to speak for a long time. His gaze had already revealed the shock in his heart at this moment. Heavens! 4 types of law energy. That's too terrifying. How did Zhuowen manage to comprehend 4 types of law energy by himself? After a moment of silence, an uproar erupted in the surroundings like boiling water. Everyone had begun to clamor. A genius who had comprehended 4 types of laws had never appeared in the 9 Netherworld realm. But now one had appeared. This guy is quite capable. He can actually comprehend 4 types of laws. There was a hint of surprise in Yang Yi's eyes. Even he did not expect Zhuowen to have 4 types of laws. Long Tian, Mo Yen Wushang, Kanan Gatha, and the others who were familiar with Zhuowen were all pleasantly surprised. This little bastard. Yen Ruhua slashed out with his sword, repelling Jian Mu. Then, he gloomily stared at Zhuowen, who was surrounded by 4 types of laws. The saint energy around Zhuowen hasn't stopped. What's going on? Could it be that this kid has other types of laws? Suddenly, someone noticed that the huge amount of saint energy around Zhuowen did not show any signs of dissipating. Instead, it seemed to be growing stronger. Everyone was shocked. This guy. It's impossible. It's impossible for him to have a 5th type of law. Qing Longzi's face was completely stiff, and Yen Ruhua was even more stunned. The 2 of them, and even the other disciples who were enemies of Zhuowen, were all in disbelief. On the other hand, the warriors who had a good relationship with Zhuowen were surprised, but more of them were happy. Death! Zhuowen's familiar and indifferent voice once again sounded in front of everyone's eyes. The surrounding atmosphere strangely fell into a stagnant state. Everyone held their breaths and stared at Zhuowen's body with their eyes wide open. Zhuowen's body surged with death will. The black fog that represented death spread around Zhuowen's body, enveloping Zhuowen's entire body. It made Zhuowen's figure faintly discernible, distant, and mysterious. The law of death. Does this guy really have a 5th type of law? Qing Longzi's eyes were filled with disappointment, and he fell into a strange silence. Not only Qing Longzi, but all the remaining warriors in the yellow fog world also fell into silence. At this moment, the yellow fog world was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. 5 types of law. Outside the yellow fog world, Chaorong's body trembled and his eyes flashed. Lord Chaorong, this kid is a good seedling. He comprehended 5 types of law, and can be considered an upper-middle genius in the central region. Guning cupped his hands and said to Chaorong. Chaorong nodded slightly and said, Guning, I know what I'm doing. Whether or not this kid is really qualified to be recommended into the Primal Chaos Temple will depend on his performance. Performance? What do you mean, Lord? Guning asked doubtfully. 5 types of law. And the armor soul on this kid's body is probably not simple. It won't be easy for this kid to become a sage. If this kid can smoothly break through to the profound sage realm, I will recommend him into the Primal Chaos Temple, Chaorong said indifferently. Hearing this, Guning's expression changed slightly. He understood what Chaorong meant. Comprehending 5 types of law was enough to show how outstanding this Zhuowen was. However, he had yet to become a sage, and no one knew whether this kid could successfully become a sage and pass the sage tribulation. Guning bowed and said, Lord, you are wise. This lowly one was impetuous. Just watch. Moreover, from the conversation of these little fellows, It seems that this Zhuowen has an immortal sacred artifact. Chao Rong waved his hand. Gunning's pupil shrank, and he said, "An immortal sacred artifact? How is that possible? How can a remote place like the eastern region have such a treasure, like an immortal sacred artifact?" Chao Rong shook his head and said, "I'm not too sure about this matter. I only deduced it from the words of those little fellows. Perhaps it's just a rumor." Chao Rong didn't care too much about it. An immortal sacred artifact was a precious treasure to him. However, Chao Rong didn't make a fuss about it. After all, the Primal Chaos Temple was a colossus in the central region. It wasn't that they didn't have immortal sacred artifacts, and they had more than one. The 5 types of laws are about to enter his body. Stop him. Cold sweat appeared on Qing Longzi's forehead. A sage who had become a sage with 3 types of laws was already very terrifying, let alone a guy who had become a sage with 5 types of laws. Qing Longzi was sure that once Zhuowen became a sage, he would become an invincible existence among profound sages. Ordinary profound sages wouldn't be a match for Zhuowen at all. Only peak profound sages would have a chance of fighting him. As soon as Qing Longzi's voice fell, the disciples of the 100 Flowers Park, the Undying Altar, the League of Assassins, Yixia, the Blue Dragon Hall, and the Barren Island also launched a fierce attack. For a moment, the defense around Zhuowen immediately weakened. Even Qing Longzi and Yin Ruhua began to fight with all their might. "Yang Yi, you can't stop me." Qing Longzi's sage might was vast and mighty. He slashed out with his blade, causing the void to explode. "Qing Longzi, you've always been looking down on me." Yang Yi shook his head. He swung his long staff and slammed it on the blade. Thousands of mountains rose up and down, and the earth collapsed. Qing Longzi frowned. He found Yang Yi extremely strange. Every time his strength increased, Yang Yi also became stronger. It was as if Yang Yi was a pool of deep water that was bottomless. "Get lost." Yin Ruhua showed his might. His long sword extended dozens of meters, and Jian Mu couldn't compete with it. He fell from the sky and knelt on one knee on the ground. Yin Ruhua ignored Jian Mu. He held his sword in his right hand, and instantly swept in front of Zhuowen. He stretched out his right hand, and the tip of his long sword pierced through the void, and pierced into Zhuowen's heart. Ding! The long sword pierced into the skin of Zhuowen's heart, but it only made a sound of metal clashing. It was only an inch away before it completely stopped. This guy's physical body? Yin Ruhua's pupils shrank to the size of needles. The long sword formed by 9 golden lines was actually unable to break through the skin of Zhuowen's heart. It could only pierce an inch deep. How tough was this physical body? Boom! Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, and the power of 5 types of laws exploded on the surface of his body. Yin Ruhua screamed and flew backwards. His right hand was directly blown to pieces. Puff! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared coldly at Yin Ruhua. His killing intent was like a Boston ivy, spreading throughout his body. "You die!" With that, Zhuowen's right palm suddenly slammed down from the sky. The power of the 13 golden lines condensed in the void, turning into a giant golden hand, and fiercely slammed into Yin Ruhua's body. "Bastard!" Yin Ruhua cursed. His golden long sword slashed out horizontally, hitting the giant golden hand. Immediately, the sound of metal clashing resounded. Kacha! The golden long sword shattered. The giant golden hand was like the power of the heavens. It directly crushed down and heavily slammed into Yin Ruhua's body. Puff! Chapter 1485. SS Crazy Slaughter. Because of Yin Ruhua, Zhuowen had completely awakened from his state of epiphany. His eyes were cold as he killed Yin Ruhua in one move. After killing Yin Ruhua, the Saint Luck on his body entered Zhuowen's glabella. The 13 golden runes on his glabella began to spread, and finally burst out with a terrifying golden light. The golden runes began to spread, and the 13 golden runes on Zhuowen's glabella directly grew to 17 golden runes. Yin Ruhua died just like that. The sound of people gasping could be heard. Yin Ruhua was ranked second in the second round of seizing the Saint Luck, and he was also a profound sage powerhouse. It was truly inconceivable that such a genius would fall so easily. Everyone's eyes fell on Zhuowen, and they were all dumbfounded. However, what made many people sigh in relief was that Zhuowen had not broken through to the profound sage realm. Just now, Yin Ruhua's interference had awakened Zhuowen from his state of epiphany, interrupting Zhuowen's process of becoming a profound sage. Zhuowen frowned slightly. Just now, the power of the 5 laws had all merged into his dantian, causing the saint power in his body to be filled with the power of the 5 laws. But even so, Zhuowen still had not broken through to the profound sage realm. Speaking of which, Yin Ruhua's attack just now had not affected him much, and Zhuowen was very clear about this. Is it because of Xiaohe? Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen quickly thought of the reason. Just now, when he was about to break through to the profound sage realm, there was an extremely strong resistance in his sea of consciousness, preventing him from smoothly becoming a profound sage. You're right. It's because of Xiaohe. He's a great nether saint dragon, and has a noble bloodline. After becoming the soul of your armor, it also increased the difficulty of your breakthrough. Cheng Huang's voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind, causing Zhuowen's pupils to shrink. You old fox, what are you talking about? Xiaohe's voice was heard as well. After scolding Cheng Huang, it said to Zhuowen cautiously, Kid, it's indeed my fault. I'm sorry. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Why are you talking about this? Since a dozen or so golden patterns aren't enough, I'll take more until I become a saint. Zhuowen did not seem to blame Xiaohe at all. He waved his hand, his eyes filled with indifference. Thank you, kid. Xiaohe's eyes were filled with gratitude. Since it's difficult for my main body to become a saint, perhaps I should let my 2 clones gather 10 golden patterns first. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He took a step forward and headed towards Yuxia and Guisha, who were still fighting with the 2 clones. Although Zhuowen had yet to enter the saint realm, he was infinitely close to the profound sage realm due to his recent breakthrough. Whoosh! Zhuowen was like a god descending to the mortal world, as he instantly arrived in front of Yuxia. Retreat! Yuxia's face was filled with shock. The scene of Yin Ruhua's death was still vivid in his mind. The Zhuowen in front of him was simply too terrifying. Even Yin Ruhua had been crushed to death in one move, let alone him. You want to retreat? What a beautiful dream. Zhuowen's right palm suddenly slammed down. Yuxia's expression changed drastically. The speed of Zhuowen's palm was simply too fast. It was like a vast mountain crushing down. Block it! Yuxia screamed as the golden trident in his hand suddenly rose up. Golden light burst out, and the phantom of the sea god appeared in the endless golden light. Its power was unparalleled. Rumble! The huge palm crushed down, and the phantom of the sea god was directly shattered. The trident also collapsed inch by inch. No! Yuxia screamed as he was directly smashed to the ground by the palm. He was motionless. Zhuowen had been merciful with this palm. With the power of his saint body, this palm was enough to crush Yuxia. However, at the last moment, he had held back and only seriously injured Yuxia. Buddha would kill him. Zhuowen ordered. The Buddhist rune beside him took a step forward and blasted out a Buddhist palm, smashing heavily onto the Yuxia. Puff! Yuxia didn't even have time to react, before he was blasted into a cloud of blood mist by Buddha One. His saint luck was directly taken by Buddha One. Sizzle! 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 Suddenly, the 7 golden runes between Buddha One's eyebrows began to grow and spread, and directly gave birth to 10 golden runes. After killing Yuxia, Zhuowen didn't slow down. He rushed toward Guisha. Guisha had already seen that the time was not right. He had already left the battlefield and fled to other places in the yellow fog world. Although Imowen was strong compared to Guisha, he was still a little weaker, so he didn't let Guisha stay. Kill all the disciples on the deserted island. Zhuowen ordered Imowen, and the latter nodded. Since Guisha didn't care about the lives of the disciples on the deserted island, Zhuowen wouldn't be polite either. He directly asked Imo when to take the saint luck from the disciples on the deserted island. Ah! 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 Screams rang out one after another. Guisha's departure left the disciples on the other deserted islands in a daze. When Imowen arrived among the disciples on the deserted island, he used lightning-fast methods and began to kill them all. In an instant, Emowen was surrounded by a cloud of blood mist. At this moment, he was like a demon god from hell, bathed in blood. 10 golden runes. After killing all the disciples on the deserted island, the number of golden runes between Emowen's eyebrows increased to 10. Boom! Boom! 2 rays of golden light pierced through the sky from the yellow fog world. Vast saint aura spread over the 9th underworld sky platform. Emowen and Buddha when are about to become saints. On the 9th underworld sky platform square, the disciples who had been eliminated all raised their heads and stared at the 2 golden pillars with shock in their eyes. Kill! While Emowen and Buddha when were breaking through to become saints, Zhuowen stared coldly at the disciples of the 100 Flowers Park, the League of Assassins, the Undying Altar, Wuxia and the Blue Dragon Hall. Without wasting any time, he took a step forward, and the golden spear in his hand shot towards the disciples like a snake. Run! Sensing the chilling killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes, the disciples trembled. They did not care about their dignity as martial artists and fled. Zhuowen was too terrifying. The strongest geniuses of the 5 forces were all killed by him. Although they were arrogant, they did not think that they were a match for him. Bastard! Qing Longzi's face was ugly. Because of Yang Yi's obstruction, he could only watch as Zhuowen slaughtered the other disciples. Puchi! Puchi! A bloody massacre occurred in the yellow fog world. The disciples of the 5 forces were all killed by Zhuowen. None of them could withstand a single blow from him. We'll give you our saint luck. Don't kill us. Finally someone was scared. He quickly gave his saint luck to Zhuowen and wanted to be teleported out. But Zhuowen did not say a word. The golden spear in his hand was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, harvesting the lives of the disciples. When the spear pierced through the heart of the last disciple, Zhuowen stopped. He pulled out the golden spear with his right hand. His eyes were indifferent, like the Grim Reaper of hell. Yun Ran, Wu Dai, Yang Yi Fuyu, Emoyen Wushang, and the others from the Demon God Palace all stared at the blood-soaked youth in front of them with complicated gazes. The shock in their hearts was like a tsunami that couldn't be suppressed for a long time. At this moment, everyone outside the 9th underworld sky platform was silent. Their eyes fell on the light screen. Other than the disciples of the Demon God Palace and the Divine Academy, the names of the disciples of the other factions were all dim and dull. The only ones left were Qing Longzi from the Blue Dragon Hall and Gui Sha from the Barren Island. Other than those 2, there was no one else. They're all dead? Someone was in a daze as he murmured. In the yellow fog world, the most elite disciples of the 9th underworld were gathered. They were the core disciples of the major forces of the 9th underworld. Now, other than the disciples of the Divine Academy and the Demon God Palace, the disciples of the other 7 major forces were almost all dead. It was too terrifying. Then who was the one who killed these disciples? It's that Zhuowen who did it. That's because the screen of light shows that the number of golden markings on that child's body is the highest. Finally, someone noticed that Zhuowen's name on the light screen was emitting a golden light that was much stronger than the other names. At this moment, among the 9 major forces, Saint Martial Sect's Wu Ho, 100 Flowers Parks by Mei Sheng, Undying Old Monster, Assassin League's Imperial Exterminator, Wuxia's Eternal Night Underworld King, and the Barren Islands Masters all narrowed their eyes. Intense killing intent burst out from the eyes of the masters of the 6 major forces. Almost all the elite disciples of their forces were dead. They couldn't take this lying down. Zhuowen, that little bastard, he killed Ruhua. I must kill him with my own hands. On the square platform of the Blue Dragon Hall, Elder Raiwa slammed his right hand on the stone platform beside the armrest. A powerful force directly smashed the stone platform into pieces. Qing Yuan frowned slightly and muttered in a low voice, "We must kill this kid, but now is not the time." Speaking of which, Sapphire Shore was also a little worried about Qing Longzi. In such a short time, Zhuowen had killed so many disciples of the other forces. Even their Blue Dragon Hall's disciples were all dead except for Qing Longzi. Sapphire Shore also felt a little pained about this, but he didn't show it. It should be soon. Zhuowen, that little bastard, is going to die soon. Sapphire Shore raised his head and looked past the ninth underworld sky platform and into the deepest part of the ninth underworld sky. It was as if there was a primordial beast hiding there. Wu Dai Taiamo, help me guard Mo1 and Buddhist rune. Zhuowen suddenly said to Wu Dai and Taiamo. The two nodded and rushed to the side of Mo1 and Buddhist rune, keeping an eye on their surroundings. Zhuowen walked towards Qing Longzi step by step and said indifferently, Qing Longzi, do you dare to fight me? Yang Yi curiously sized up Zhuowen. Soon after, he took a step aside, allowing Qing Longzi to face Zhuowen directly. Yang Yi himself, on the other hand, stood to the side with an indifferent expression. Chapter 1486. Forcing Qing Longzi to retreat. He already has 25 golden runes, but Zhuowen still can't break through to the Saint Realm? In the Yellow Fog world, almost all the disciples of the other forces have been killed. Only the disciples of Jiaxin Academy and Demon God Palace were left. They raised their heads slightly as their gazes landed on Zhuowen. All of them revealed looks of shock. At this moment, Zhuowen's saint aura was too terrifying. The pressure that faintly permeated the air made it difficult for them to breathe. 10 golden runes were enough for an ordinary cultivator to reach the Saint Realm. However, Zhuowen had 25 Saint runes, but he still showed no signs of breaking through. 5 types of laws have been integrated into the Saint Force. As long as Xiao He completely transforms, I'll be able to become a saint. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He knew his situation best. When 10 golden runes appeared between his eyebrows, Xiao He had already started to transform. Now that he had 25 golden runes, Xiao He was wrapped in a golden cocoon in his sea of consciousness. As the number of golden runes between his eyebrows increased, the cocoon around Xiao He became thicker and thicker. The aura of the cocoon also became more terrifying. Zhuowen knew very well that once Xiao He broke out of the cocoon, it would undergo the final transformation. At that time, Zhuowen would be able to break through the final shackles and reach the Saint Realm. Qing Longzi frowned. Zhuowen's aura was too terrifying. He only had 10 golden runes, but Zhuowen had 25 golden runes. In this Yellow Fog world where he couldn't use any other means, and could only use the power of Saint Luck, Qing Longzi wasn't confident he could defeat Zhuowen. Qing Longzi, do you dare to fight? Zhuowen took a step forward. The power of the Saint runes spread over his feet, causing the ground to tremble. A muffled thunder-like voice spread across the entire space, exploding in everyone's ears. Qing Longzi's frown deepened, but he didn't immediately accept the challenge. In other words, he was a little upset, and even a little timid. Brother Qing Longzi, didn't you call yourself the #1 genius of the 9 Netherworld realm? Why don't you accept the challenge? Yang Yi leaned against a rock and looked at Qing Longzi with a smile. His voice was full of mockery. Qing Longzi's face turned somewhat ugly, especially when he saw the ridicule in the eyes of Yang Yi and the others, which made Qing Longzi feel stifled in his heart. How can you obtain such powerful saint luck by robbing other people's saint luck? If you want to fight me again after we leave the Yellow Fog world, do you dare? Qing Longzi said coldly. Is the #1? Is his hall? Blue Hall's? Lu Hantian, is Grand Hall's first? Lu Hantian Lu Tian uses Li Studio said Hantian said. The others also looked at him with disdain. In the Yellow World, no one could use their own means. They had to start from nothing. Here, Zhuowen's combat power was undoubtedly much stronger than Qing Longzi's. Needless to say, this battle was Zhuowen's complete victory. Now Qing Longzi had mentioned the battle in the Yellow World. This was undoubtedly admitting that he was inferior to Zhuowen in the Yellow World. If you don't dare to fight, then I'll force you to fight. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He bounced his legs and rushed out like a cannonball toward Qing Longzi. Qing Longzi's face changed slightly. He slashed out with his dragon-head broadsword, and a blade shot out from the void. Countless images of dragons appeared around the saber blade. They appeared to be the rulers of the world, and their power was vast and mighty. Boom! Zhuowen didn't dodge at all. He punched out and smashed the blade into dust. Golden light burst out. Zhuowen had a second-rate saint body. In addition to the vast saint aura of 25 golden patterns, it was difficult for Qing Longzi to compete with him. Looking at Zhuowen's imposing manner, Qing Longzi's face changed drastically. He held his dragon-head broadsword and retreated. His attack was broken so easily. It was unexpected. At the same time, he didn't dare to fight with Zhuowen. Retreat! Thinking of this, Qing Longzi decisively retreated. Countless dragon shadows appeared around him. He was extremely fast. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He stomped on the void, and a ring-shaped airwave burst out from under his feet. Relying on the powerful force of his feet, his speed soared to an extremely terrifying level. His entire body was like a puff of smoke, disappearing from where he was. When he reappeared, he was already behind Qing Longzi. Crouching dragon fist. He punched across the air and blasted behind Qing Longzi. Dragon shadows erupted around his fist. This punch carried the power of 10,000 caddies. The pressure formed by the punch directly enveloped Qing Longzi, making it difficult for him to move. Break! Qing Longzi's face was ferocious. He twisted his waist, and the dragon-head broadsword drew 360 degrees around him. Broadsword chi filled the air and turned into a golden dragon. Rumble! The pressure from the punch was directly shattered by Qing Longzi's dragon-head broadsword. Swoosh! The moment the pressure was broken, a fist broke through the air and smashed heavily in front of Qing Longzi. Qing Longzi's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He held his dragon-head broadsword horizontally in front of him and blocked the punch. Bang! 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 A series of explosions resounded. The broadsword in front of Qing Longzi was struck away. Qing Longzi was sent flying at such a terrifying distance. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Zhuowen, just you wait. Once you get out of the yellow fog world, it will be the time of your death. Qing Longzi's sharp voice resounded. Following which, his speed soared to an extremely terrifying level. He directly teleported and disappeared from where he was. Boom! The moment Qing Longzi disappeared, a demon-like figure descended from the sky and smashed into the place where Qing Longzi was just a moment ago. A huge crater was created and countless rocks were sent flying. You sure are quick to escape. Zhuowen stood in the crater and looked at Qing Longzi, who had already disappeared. His eyelids drooped and his brows furrowed. Qing Longzi had used some kind of secret technique to be able to instantly disappear from where he was. It was as if he had escaped into the void, making it difficult to find him. If Zhuowen could use the law of void at this moment, he could try to track Qing Longzi. Unfortunately, he couldn't use the law of void in the yellow fog world. Whoosh! 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 Numerous figures rushed over and gathered around Zhuowen. These people were the disciples of the Excellent Gods Institute and the Demon God Palace. Lu Hantian immediately arrived in front of Zhuowen. He fiercely hammered Zhuowen's shoulder with his right hand and said with a hearty smile, "I knew that you wouldn't miss the 9 Netherworld Assembly." Zhuowen also hammered Lu Hantian's shoulder. When he saw the concern in the latter's eyes, his heart felt warm. He said, "Big brother Hantian, congratulations on successfully advancing to the profound sage realm. I can't compare with you. You're too abnormal. You haven't even entered the profound sage realm, but you already have such a terrifying cultivation. It's really unexpected. Right, you already have 25 golden patterns between your eyebrows. Why haven't you broken through to the profound sage realm yet?" Lu Hantian looked at Zhuowen with a puzzled expression and asked the question in his heart. Not only Lu Hantian, but Moyan Wushang, Wu Dai Gatha, Jia Nan, and the others also looked at Zhuowen strangely. They couldn't figure out how he still hadn't broken through to the profound sage realm with 25 golden patterns. At this moment, although Zhuowen hadn't entered the profound sage realm yet, the profound sage aura on his body was even more terrifying than that of an ordinary profound sage, due to his saint luck. Zhuowen shook his head with a bitter smile and vaguely gave a reason. If he said it about Xiaohe, the others definitely wouldn't believe him, so it was better not to say it. Seeing Zhuowen like this, everyone knew that this matter was related to Zhuowen's secret, so they didn't ask too much. "Zhuowen, what's the relationship between you and these Buddhist and demonic runes?" Yang Yi walked over from the crowd and pointed at the Buddhist and demonic runes that were still breaking through. "That's my external incarnation," Zhuowen said with a smile. Yang Yi's expression became serious, but he immediately smiled and said, "Amazing. Even your external incarnation is so extraordinary." The fighting strength of Buddhist and demonic cultivators was more terrifying than that of ordinary cultivators. Zhuowen's two external incarnations were such terrifying cultivators. There was no doubt that if both of these incarnations really became profound sages, they would be of great help to Zhuowen. "Master, what should we do now?" Wu Dai suddenly asked. "We can only wait. Now that many of us have gathered 10 golden runes, we can use this time to comprehend the Saint Luck. Perhaps we can break through to the profound sage realm, or even advance further in the profound sage realm," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Hearing this, the others didn't have any objections. After the battle just now, many people had gathered 10 saint runes. Lu Hantian, Wu Dai, Yang Yi, Gatha and Yun Ran had all gathered 10 golden runes. Although the others hadn't gathered 10 golden runes, it was still quite a lot. If they carefully comprehended the Saint Luck, they would definitely gain a lot. "Everyone, it's best not to split up. Now that Qing Longzi and Gui Sha have escaped, if you meet the two of them alone, I'm afraid it won't bode well for you," Zhuowen suddenly reminded. The disciples of Jiashen Institute naturally didn't have any objections, but many of the disciples of Demon God Palace were somewhat unconvinced. "Senior sister, why should we listen to this guy? We're not disciples of Jiashen Institute," a disciple of Demon God Palace said unconvinced. Yun Ran's beautiful eyes stared at the disciple who rebutted, and he immediately withered. "Zhuowen is right. Qing Longzi and Gui Sha are nowhere to be found. It's indeed a little inappropriate for us to be alone," Yun Ran said indifferently, but her beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen. Even she was amazed by the battle just now. The strength of the young man in front of her was too terrifying. At the same time, she also recalled the various rumors about Zhuowen. Is an immortal saint artifact really so magical? It can actually raise Zhuowen's strength to such a terrifying level. Without a doubt, Yun Ran attributed Zhuowen's battle strength to the immortal saint artifact on his body. Only an immortal saint artifact could turn something rotten into something magical. Zhuowen chatted with Lu Hantian and the others for a while. Then he stepped into the air and landed between MO1 and FO1. With a wave of his sleeve, the Saint Luck spread out, forming a golden barrier around the two of them. He sat between the two of them with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Chapter 1487. Buddha's demon Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the air, while the others found a place to sit cross-legged, silently refining the Saint Luck in their bodies. Using the power of the Saint Luck in their bodies, they silently comprehended the power of laws in their bodies, wanting to use this power of Saint Luck to break through to the Saint realm. As the days passed, the Saint pressure in Wu Dai and Gatha's bodies grew stronger and stronger. The laws lingered around their bodies and merged into the Saint power in their dantian, beginning the final breakthrough. Wu Dai and Gatha are about to break through. Lu Hantian and Yun Ran stood up at the same time. Both of them were profound sages, and because of the 10 golden patterns, it only took them 2 days to advance from the void profound saint realm to the nirvana profound saint realm. As for Wu Dai and Gatha, they were both half-step sages, so the time it took for them to advance to the saint realm was naturally much longer than Lu Hantian and Yun Ran. Moreover, to advance to the saint realm, one needed to pass the saint tribulation, which required a lot of time and foundation. Wu Dai and Gatha had only comprehended one kind of law, so after obtaining 10 golden patterns, it was normal for them to advance to the saint realm in 5 days. The strangest thing was actually Yang Yi. He had also obtained 10 golden patterns, but there were no signs of him breaking through. This made Lu Hantian and Yun Ran feel quite strange. Moreover, the two of them couldn't see through Yang Yi's realm at all. They only vaguely felt that Yang Yi should be a profound sage. At this moment, Yang Yi was leaning against a dilapidated wall, while Jian Mu stood beside him with a ruthless gaze. Yang Yi glanced sideways at Jianmu and said, Junior brother Jianmu, if you want to obtain 10 golden patterns, it should be very easy, right? Why did you deliberately stop at 9 golden patterns? Jianmu's eyes flickered, and he said, Because I still owe Chen Shui a favor, and I have my own use for these 9 golden patterns. Once you reach 10 golden patterns, the power of the saint luck in them will help you break through to the saint realm. At that time, the golden patterns will turn into your power. However, before you reach 10 golden patterns, the golden patterns can actually be offered by themselves. At this point, Yang Yi stopped talking. His eyes were filled with ridicule as he looked at Jianmu. Jianmu frowned slightly and sighed. I'm just taking precautions. I hope senior brother won't interfere in this matter. Yang Yi stared at Jianmu seriously. Finally he sighed and said, After this favor is repaid, you can leave with me. Your sword is very suitable for cultivating the law of emotionlessness. Perhaps you have yet to comprehend how powerful the law of emotionlessness is, but you will know in the future. Jianmu's eyes revealed a trace of sadness as he said, Senior brother, I understand. After returning the favor, I want to go to the Burning Heaven sect again. Then I'll go with you. Yang Yi, however, shook his head and said, You can't go to the Burning Heaven sect. Zhuowen has an immortal sacred artifact. I believe that he will bring Mu Qinxue back. You may meet again in the future. Hearing this, Jianmu fell completely silent. Wu Dai and Gatha's Saint Tribulation were extremely extraordinary. After all, the former was a rare and powerful demon emperor, and the latter's Scourge Armor Soul was even more extraordinary. In the dark clouds, countless golden lightning spread out like golden pythons intertwining. Although the golden lightning was terrifying, Wu Dai and Gatha were even more extraordinary. After 2 days, the two finally passed the Saint Tribulation. The power in their bodies had all turned into powerful Saint Force. Moreover, because of the Saint Tribulation, the Saint Force in their bodies and the law of Saint Force became more and more compatible. Void Arcane Saint Realm, Lu Hantian, and Yin Ran's eyes lit up at the same time. They rushed to Gatha and Wu Dai's side respectively. The other disciples of Fine God Institute and Demon God Palace also gathered around, their eyes filled with envy. Gatha, congratulations on becoming a saint. Lu Hantian laughed and was quite forthright. Gatha smiled shyly, but her beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen in the sky. She said worriedly, I wonder if Big Brother Zhuowen's 2 doppelgangers can successfully become saints. That guy definitely can. You can rest assured. Lu Hantian smiled slightly, his eyes also falling on Zhuowen. At the same time, Wu Dai, who was surrounded by the people of Demon God Palace, also looked at Zhuowen. Boom. While everyone was waiting with bated breath, 2 terrifying saint auras soared into the sky, breaking through the entire yellow fog world. It was like the light of the rising sun, sprinkling on the ground. Zhuowen's 2 doppelgangers are going to pass the Saint Tribulation? The 2 saint auras soared into the sky, attracting the attention of Lu Hantian and the others. They all raised their heads and looked at the 2 doppelgangers floating in the sky with awe. Zhuowen opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. At the end of the sky, dark green clouds were constantly gathering, and dark golden lightning was raging inside. Moreover, the dark golden lightning was so dense that it could manifest into blooming golden lotuses, looking gorgeous and terrifying. Boom! A bolt of golden lightning descended from the sky. As it descended, countless golden lotuses bloomed. The power spread out, causing countless living beings in the world to tremble. What a terrifying Saint Tribulation! Lu Hantian and the others' faces were a little ugly. The Saint Tribulation that Zhuowen's 2 doppelgangers passed was too terrifying. It was much more terrifying than Wu Dai's and Gatha's Saint Tribulation. Among the countless golden lightning bolts, there were actually illusory golden lotuses. This was unprecedented. Let's pass the Saint Tribulation together. Looking at the terrifying golden lightning in the sky, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. With a thought, he controlled the 2 doppelgangers to rush out. Mo Wen and Fo Wen held golden Buddhist commandment blades in their hands and rose up, standing on top of the golden lightning. Boom! The terrifying power of lightning exploded, and the Buddha and demon doppelgangers roared in anger. They slashed out with their Buddhist commandment blades, and the golden lightning was annihilated. For some reason, the combined power of the Buddha and demon doppelgangers was extremely vast and powerful. It was said that the combination of Buddha and demon could produce a new kind of energy, and that was the Buddha and demon power. Back then, the fighting Buddha and demon sage had merged the two kinds of energy and refined them into the Buddha demon eye. When Zhuowen's Buddha and demon doppelgangers joined forces, the Buddha and demon power formed was so powerful that even the golden lightning formed by the Saint Tribulation could not do anything to it. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky, the Saint Tribulation was getting more and more terrifying. Countless golden lotuses were born from the thunderclouds. The lotuses bloomed, and the petals exploded. The surrounding space was shattered into countless spatial cracks under the terrifying power of the golden lotuses. Lu Hantian and the others turned pale. Zhuowen's Saint Tribulation was too powerful. Even an ordinary saint might fall in the face of such a Saint Tribulation. However, Zhuowen's Buddha and demon doppelgangers were not afraid. The karma law of Buddha and demon doppelgangers merged into the Buddha saint power, and the demon doppelgangers merged into the demon saint power. When the Buddha saint power and demon saint power merged together, the Buddha and demon saint power formed a terrifying Buddha and demon doppelgangers. Even though the golden lightning had produced countless golden lotuses, it was still crushed into dust by the combined power of the Buddha and demon doppelgangers. The Saint Tribulation of the two doppelgangers lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before it finally subsided. There was no doubt that as time passed, the power of the Saint Tribulation grew stronger. However, the performance of the Buddha and demon doppelgangers had taken everyone by surprise. No matter how strong the Saint Tribulation was, the combined power of the two doppelgangers grew stronger. The terrifying Saint Tribulation could not do anything to the Buddha and demon doppelgangers. Boom! Boom! When the Saint Tribulation gradually subsided, the Buddha and demon doppelgangers descended from the sky. Their gazes fell on Zhuowen as they lowered their heads slightly, as if waiting for Zhuowen to give them orders. Zhuowen, your two doppelgangers have successfully broken through. Congratulations! Lu Hantian and the others came forward to welcome them. They stared at Zhuowen with joy in their eyes. Zhuowen also revealed a look of joy. The Buddha and demon doppelgangers had finally broken through to the profound sage realm. Moreover, he could faintly feel that the Buddha and demon doppelgangers were very different from before. Buddha and demon can be combined, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. Soon after, with a thought, the Buddha and demon doppelgangers merged together. Suddenly, the black demonic energy and the golden Buddha energy quickly circulated like liquid. Boom! 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 The two doppelgangers merged together, forming a majestic figure. The left side of this figure was like a demon, while the right side was like a Buddha. Boom! Boom! The moment this Buddha and demon doppelganger appeared, a terrifying ancient aura overflowed. Lu Hantian and the others couldn't help but retreat with shock in their eyes. Lu Hantian's eyes were filled with fear. The pressure released by this Buddha and demon doppelganger was so terrifying that their bodies even trembled. They felt like prostrating themselves in worship. Zhuowen withdrew his right hand, and the Buddha and demon doppelganger quickly shrank, turning into an eye the size of a thumb. Black and golden colors constantly circulated in this eye, and Buddha energy and demonic energy alternated. It was the Buddha demon eye. After the Buddha and demon doppelgangers had become profound sages, the power of the Buddha demon eye had been completely unlocked. Whoosh! The Buddha demon eye shot into Zhuowen's forehead like a stream of light. Suddenly, the aura on Zhuowen's body became hundreds of times more terrifying than before. At this moment, Zhuowen was simultaneously carrying the power of both Buddha and demon. The true power of the Buddha demon eye was completely displayed at this moment. Emptiness in one thought, Buddha demon eye appears. Zhuowen shouted, and the Buddha demon eye on his forehead cracked open. Buddha energy and demonic energy burst out at the same time, shooting straight into the sky. In the sky, the Buddha and demon doppelganger stepped out from the void. Their huge bodies were indomitable like towering mountains. The Buddha kowtows 9 times to the heavens, the demon's 10 most dangerous places. The 9 heavens and 10 earths, the Buddha and demon are unparalleled. A majestic and ancient voice came from the Buddha and demon doppelganger in the sky, exploding in Zhuowen's ears. The Buddha kowtows 9 times to the heavens, the demon's 10 most dangerous places. The 9 heavens and 10 earths, the Buddha and demon are unparalleled. Zhuowen murmured along with the voice of the Buddha demon's shadow. As he repeated this sentence, his eyes revealed a look of understanding. Moreover, Zhuowen was chanting faster and faster. He could feel that this sentence contained a different meaning. Zhuowen, this is... Lu Hantian retreated dozens of meters and stared at Zhuowen, who was sitting cross-legged in the distance. Chapter 1488. 9 kowtows to heaven. At this moment, the Buddha demon eye had completely awakened. The Buddha demon eye's 9 kowtows to heaven, and the demon eye's 10 perilous lands were the ultimate skills of the Buddha demon eye. The Buddha demon eye's 9 kowtows to heaven, the first kowtows to heaven, the second kowtows to heaven, the third kowtows to heaven, the fourth kowtows to heaven, the fifth kowtows to heaven, the sixth kowtows to heaven, the seventh kowtows to heaven, the 8th kowtows to heaven, and the 9th kowtows to heaven. The demon eye's 10 perilous lands were the first perilous land, the second perilous land, the third perilous land, the fourth perilous land, the fourth perilous land, the fifth perilous land, the sixth perilous land, the seventh perilous land, the 8th immovable land, the 9th perilous land, and the 10th perilous land. After the Buddha demon eye's awakening, it can actually trigger the skills contained within. I wonder how powerful this skill is. Zhuowen slowly stood up, and the Buddha demon eye between his eyebrows flickered with golden and black brilliance. He pressed down with his right hand and shouted, "The Buddha demon eye's 9 kowtows to heaven, the first kowtows to heaven." As soon as he said that, the huge Buddha image in the sky took a step forward. Following Zhuowen's instructions, the huge Buddha palm fell from the sky and smashed down with a rumble. Boom! Boom! The power of this Buddha palm was extremely terrifying. As the palm fell, the entire sky seemed to be on the verge of collapse, and the surrounding space cracked open. When the Buddha palm finally landed on the ground, a shockwave thousands of meters tall spread out in all directions with the Buddha palm as the center, causing the earth to violently tremble. In an instant, numerous cracks appeared on the ground, and the area within 1,000 miles turned into a terrifying ruin. As for Lu Hantian and the others, although they were standing not far from Zhuowen, the Buddha palm was under Zhuowen's control, so they were naturally unharmed. What a terrifying attack! Seeing the powerful destructive power caused by the Buddha palm, Lu Hantian and the others were dumbfounded and inwardly smacked their lips. Even Zhuowen was a little surprised. This was only the first kowtow of the Buddha demon eye's 9 kowtows to heaven, yet its power was already so terrifying. It had already reached the level of an ordinary profound sage. Then, wouldn't the remaining 8 kowtows be even more terrifying? Is this the true power of the Buddha demon eye? Zhuowen revealed a look of ecstasy. Before the Buddha demon eye had awakened, it was actually of little use to him. Even after he had split into 2 clones, the help it provided to him was extremely limited. Now that the 2 Buddha and demon doppelgangers had both become saints, they had combined to form the Buddha demon eye. The power of the 2 skills contained within was actually this terrifying. Xiao Hei, wait till you've truly transformed. My true body will become a true saint. Then, we'll battle it out in all directions in desolation. Zhuowen raised his head, and his gaze pierced through the layers of yellow fog, and landed on the 9 square platforms around the 9 underworld's heavenly platform. He knew that his identity had been completely exposed. In addition, he had killed all the elite disciples of the other forces in the 9th netherworld realm. Coupled with the fact that Zhuowen possessed an immortal sacred artifact, the 9 netherworld realm no longer tolerated him. After the 9 netherworld conference ended, he knew that he would be facing the entire 9 netherworld realm. Even so, what was he afraid of? Before participating in the 9 netherworld conference, He had already prepared himself to face the attacks of countless martial artists in the Nine Netherworld realm. I want to become a saint. Zhuowen roared towards the sky. His voice was like thunder, and it rumbled. The entire Nine Netherworld heaven was filled with Zhuowen's terrifying and loud voice. Not only in the Yellow Fog world, countless martial artists in the Nine Netherworld heavenly platform could clearly hear Zhuowen's heroic voice. What? This Zhuowen hasn't become a saint yet? This lad has 25 golden lines all to himself. He has almost occupied the majority of the saint luck, and he still hasn't become a saint? When these words came out, countless people were in an uproar. Generally speaking, 10 golden lines were enough for a sage to become a saint. However, this Zhuowen was a freak. This lad must die. On the square platform of the martial Netherworld realm, Wuho took a step forward and floated outside the Nine Netherworld heavenly platform. His eyes were filled with malice. Behind Wuho, there were dozens of figures. They were all elders of the sacred martial sect. Most of them were sage to be. Originally, the Grand Elder of the Saint Martial Sect was a void arcane sage. But he was crippled by Zhuowen, the number one genius of the sacred martial sect, Wu Zhantian, and 3 core disciples had also been killed by Zhuowen. This grudge was irreconcilable. Zhuowen is arrogant and domineering. He dares to kill innocent people in the Nine Netherworld Conference. This kind of vicious person deserves to be killed. After the sacred martial sect stood up, the undying old monster of the undying altar, by Mei Sheng of the 100 Flowers Park, the imperial exterminator of the League of Assassins, Yasha Hai, Yongyayama King, and Desolate Island Desert all brought their respective higher-ups and gathered beside Wu Ho. The 6 saints brought their own powerful martial artists and stared at the Nine Netherworld heavenly platform with murderous intent. Although they didn't dare to approach the Nine Netherworld heavenly platform because of Chao Rong, they could wait until the Nine Netherworld conference ended. At that time, Zhuowen's time of death would come. Everyone is right. Zhuowen is too arrogant. Does he really think that we can't do anything to him in the Nine Netherworld heavenly platform? Once he comes out, this kid will have a taste of what it's like to be dead. Sapphire Shore's clear voice came from the square platform of the Dragon Netherworld realm. Then, he brought Elder Raiwa and the higher-ups of the Blue Dragon Hall over and gathered beside the 6 forces. The leaders of the 6 forces all looked at Sapphire Shore and cupped their hands in acknowledgement. As the strongest heavenly saint in the Nine Netherworld realm, Sapphire Shore had an important position and weight in the hearts of the leaders of the other forces. Palace Master Qing is right. This kid is too arrogant. He should be taught a lesson. The Eternal Night Dark Monarch of the Yixia laughed. The others also hurriedly agreed. In the face of everyone's flattery, Qing Yuan enjoyed it quite a bit and said indifferently, "This kid is also relying on the uniqueness of the Yellow Fog world, coupled with the fact that this little bastard seems to have an extremely strong physique, so he is able to display such great strength. If he comes out of the Yellow Fog world, not to mention Qing Longzi, even Gui Sha can easily deal with him." Desolate Island Huang Emo pondered for a moment before nodding his head. Palace Master Qing is right. This Yellow Fog world is indeed extremely beneficial to this child with his powerful physique. He's just lucky. He's just a little brat who hasn't entered the Saint realm. When we come out of the Yellow Fog world, we must get Gui Sha and Qing Longzi to teach him a lesson and take away his saint luck. The leaders of the other forces discussed among themselves. It was as if Zhuowen was already a fish on their chopping board. Zhuowen is finished. Looks like the leaders of the forces of the Netherworld realm will join forces to deal with him. When the Nine Netherworld conference ends, he won't be able to escape. Looking at this scene, countless cultivators who were paying attention to the Nine Netherworld conference shook their heads and sighed. At the same time they felt pity. They all knew that Zhuowen had an immortal saint artifact, but they regretted that they didn't have the qualifications to compete for it. After all, the leaders of the forces of the Netherworld realm were already waiting outside the Nine Netherworld platform. They didn't have any chance to get a share. Before that, I want to make it clear that Zhuowen was a disciple of the Divine Academy. Sapphire Shore's tone suddenly changed as he stared sinisterly at Yen Ji. who was on the square platform of the divine nether realm, and continued, "Everyone should be familiar with this matter. Brother Yen, when this kid comes out, I don't think your divine academy will interfere, right?" With that said, the leaders of the other forces all looked at the square platform where the divine nether realm was located. Even the other martial warriors were staring at Yanji. They really wanted to see how Yanji would answer. Yanji's gaze was indifferent as he coldly said, "Sapphire Shore, it's not up to you to decide whether you want to interfere or not. Also, it's best that your Blue Dragon Hall doesn't meddle in the affairs of our Divine Academy." As he spoke, a blazing sun rose from Yanji's body. The aura of a heavenly saint spread out in all directions like a vast ocean, spreading throughout the surrounding space. Sapphire Shore's gaze narrowed as he said with some surprise, "Looks like you've completely consolidated the Heavenly Een Saint realm, and even cultivated to the peak of the Heavenly Een Saint realm?" The other leaders of the other 6 forces were also visibly moved. They also knew that Yanji had become a heavenly saint. However, they didn't expect Yanji to cultivate to the peak of the Heavenly Een Saint realm in such a short period of 4 to 5 years. This speed was a little too fast. Yanji, I know you're a smart person. When the 9 Netherworld Conference ends, I hope you won't do something you'll regret." Sapphire Shore snorted coldly as his gaze landed on the square platform of the Demon Nether Realm. He asked, "Zhao Jun, as the Palace Master of the Demon God Palace, you can be considered the leader of a force standing at the peak of the 9 Netherworld realm. Shouldn't you make a statement now?" Zhao Jun was the Palace Master of the Demon God Palace, and also the master of Yin Ran and Wu Dai. Her original body was a 1,000-year-old white snake that had cultivated into a demon saint. Although she was only at the peak of the profound sage realm, because she was a demon saint, her combat strength was stronger than the other leaders. She should be on the same level as Huang Emo on the deserted island, second only to Sapphire Shore and Yanji. Zhao Jun narrowed her beautiful eyes and shook her head slightly. "I don't want to interfere in this matter. Palace Master Qing should choose someone else." Wu Dai was her favorite disciple. Wu Dai had pleaded with her many times before. If she met Zhuowen this time, she hoped that she wouldn't deal with Zhuowen. Although the temptation of an Immortal Saint artifact was great, she also knew how terrifying an Immortal Saint artifact's power was. Therefore, she decided not to participate in the dispute between Zhuowen and the other nether realms. Sapphire Shore frowned slightly when he heard Zhao Jun's refusal, but he didn't say anything. Since Zhao Jun wasn't willing, he wouldn't force it. At this moment, Chao Rong and Guning were standing side by side in the sky above the 9 Netherworld platform. Lord Chao Rong, the leaders of the 7 Nether Realm forces, led by the Dragon Nether Realm, probably want to deal with Zhuowen. Do you want to interfere? Guning asked Chao Rong in a low voice. Chapter 1489. SS Defiance and Challenge. Guning nodded. Chao Rong was right. Zhuowen had comprehended 5 powers of laws all by himself, making him an above-average genius in the Central Plains. However, the more powers of laws one possessed, the more difficult it would be to reach sainthood, compared to regular cultivators, who had comprehended a single law. Chao Rong had seen far too many half-saint geniuses like Zhuowen, who had comprehended multiple laws in the Central Plains. But there were not many of them who could reach sainthood in the end. Sainthood was an extremely difficult and powerful shackle for cultivators. Coupled with the difficulty of comprehending multiple laws, it was basically as difficult as ascending to the heavens. If Zhuowen could successfully reach sainthood, Chao Rong planned on recommending him to the chaotic divine temple. There was nothing wrong with helping Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen had not reached sainthood yet. There were many unknowns before him, so Chao Rong obviously would not be keen on helping Zhuowen. As a matter of fact, he would treat him coldly. In his opinion, no matter how talented a genius was, they would be trash if they did not mature. After all, there were far too many examples of geniuses dying halfway through. It was simply too many to mention. The 3rd trial is about to come to an end. It's time to let these little fellows out. Chao Rong said indifferently. Sir Chao Rong, do you have an idea of the 9 spots this time? Guning asked politely. Chao Rong smiled and said, Of course I do. I plan on judging by the number of golden stripes and overall strength. With that, Chao Rong waved his hand, and a powerful force surged out of his hand. The yellow mist in the world gradually receded, revealing its true appearance. The moment the yellow mist receded, the forbidden arts and restrictions in this world also disappeared. The remaining cultivators in this world all discovered that they could once again use the power of laws that they were unable to use before. The yellow mist has vanished. Does that mean the 3rd trial has ended? Zhuowen and the others raised their heads. They were stunned when they saw the yellow mist recede. At this moment, Chao Rong and Guning hovered above the world of yellow mist. They looked down at Zhuowen and the others silently and said, The time limit of the world of yellow mist is up. The 3rd trial has officially ended. As these words were spoken, 2 figures rushed over from the other 2 directions of the yellow fog world. Zhuowen and the rest squinted their eyes when they saw the 2 figures. They were no strangers to these 2 figures. They were Wuxia and Qing Longzi, who had escaped earlier. The 2 of them also noticed that after the yellow mist disappeared, the power of law and saint energy in their bodies could be mobilized, so they immediately rushed out. The 2 of them stopped not far away from Zhuowen and stared at Zhuowen and the others with unfriendly gazes. Especially when they looked at Zhuowen, their gazes were filled with killing intent. Previously, in the world of yellow fog, they were unable to mobilize the power of laws within their bodies. They could not even use the saint artifacts in their spirit rings. Zhuowen was also very strange. His body was extremely tough, so he firmly suppressed them, causing them to be in a very sorry state. Now that the yellow mist had disappeared, they were finally able to use their own power of laws. They knew that Zhuowen was still not a saint, and he was no match for them at all. Sensing the murderous intent in Wuxia and Qing Longzi's eyes, Zhuowen ignored them. His gaze fell on Chao Rong. He knew that Chao Rong was about to announce the results. The biggest benefit of this 9 Serenity Conference is the saint luck born from the 9 Serenity Heaven. The second is the key to the Middle Land. I think that since all of you were able to hold on until now, you can be considered as the elite geniuses among all the cultivators in this 9 Serenity Conference. You all have more or less benefited from the saint luck, so I won't talk about this anymore. What I'm going to say next is that only 9 of you can get the key, but there are more than 10 of you. This time, I will rank you according to the number of golden stripes on your body and your overall strength. Do you have any objections? At this point, Chao Rong deliberately glanced at the crowd below. Zhuowen and the others naturally did not have any objections. They all shook their heads. Chao Rong nodded, then pointed at Zhuowen and said, Your name is Zhuowen. This time, you obtained 25 golden stripes and are ranked first in the 9 Serenity Conference. As soon as Chao Rong said this, countless people in the surroundings were in an uproar. It was obvious that Zhuowen was ranked first in the 9 Serenity Conference, which was somewhat unexpected. Qing Longzi's eyes were even darker. Originally, he should have been the first in the 9 Serenity Conference, but he did not expect that Zhuowen would come out of nowhere. The leaders of the 7 forces led by Sapphire Shore of the 9 Serenity Realm were filled with murderous intent and even greed. The 9 Serenity Conference was about to end, which meant that the restrictions on the surface of the 9 Serenity platform would be lifted. At that time, Zhuowen would not be able to escape. Chao Rong's eyes were still indifferent. After announcing the first in the 9 Serenity Conference, she also announced the remaining 8 names. 2nd, Qing Longzi; 3rd, Yang Yi; 4th, Lu Hantian; 5th, Yun Ran; 6th, Wu Dai; 7th, Gatha; 8th, Guisha; and 9th, Jianmu. At this point, the rankings of the 9 Serenity Conference had been completely decided. Zhuowen had directly become the biggest dark horse this time, which shocked everyone. Lord Chao Rong, I'm sure you know the uniqueness of the yellow fog world. In there, we can't use our full strength at all. We can only rely on the power of Saint Luck to fight. It's actually not very fair for us. Suddenly, Qing Longzi stood out and glanced at Zhuowen, who was not far away. He continued. This kid's luck was pretty good before. Coupled with his despicable methods, he obtained quite a bit of saint luck. With his cultivation not yet in the saint realm, he's not qualified to be the first in the 9 Serenity Conference. Chao Rong raised an eyebrow and said indifferently, Are you questioning my decision? Qing Longzi's body trembled, and he quickly said, I don't dare. Chao Rong was from the Primal Chaos Temple. Qing Longzi didn't dare to offend him. He continued, No matter what, the number 1 cultivator of the 9 underworlds should be the strongest. If this young man can defeat me, he will be the number 1 cultivator of the 9 underworlds. Lu Hantian's expression changed when he heard Qing Longzi's words. He said, Qing Longzi, you really have the nerve to say that. You weren't a match for Zhuowen in the Yellow Fog world, and fled like a stray dog. Now that you've come out, you're clamoring to challenge Zhuowen. Your actions are simply shameless. Hearing that, Qing Longzi coldly stared at Lu Hantian and said indifferently, Since his strength is inferior to mine, what qualifications does he have to be the strongest in the 9 underworlds? This title is completely undeserved. You're already at the 3rd profound glimpse sage realm, and Zhuowen hasn't even entered the sage realm yet. Don't you feel ashamed challenging Zhuowen? If Zhuowen was at the same cultivation as you, would you dare to challenge him? Lu Hantian said indignantly. Qing Longzi didn't say anything. He looked at Chao Rong. He knew that the decision was in Chao Rong's hands. As long as Chao Rong agreed, everything would be fine. Lord Chao Rong, Qing Longzi is right. No matter what, the number 1 cultivator of the 9 underworlds should be deserved, right? A mere piece of trash who hasn't even entered the saint realm isn't strong enough. How can he be qualified to be the number 1 in the 9 underworlds? Everyone below the saint realm is an ant. Although this young man has grasped quite a bit of the power of laws, it's still unknown whether he can become a saint realm cultivator. Letting a piece of trash who hasn't even become a saint realm cultivator be the number 1 in the 9 underworlds is a bit inappropriate. Sapphire Shore stood outside the 9 underworld sky platform. He clasped his hands at Chao Rong and spoke politely. Chao Rong smiled faintly. I didn't say that you can't challenge him. If you think you have the strength of the number 1 in the 9 underworlds, you can challenge Zhuowen. If you can defeat him, you will be the number 1 in the 9 underworlds. You can even take away the saint luck in his body. This is the duty of the number 1 in the 9 underworlds. As soon as Chao Rong said that, the surrounding cultivators were in an uproar. Chao Rong's words were very clear. As long as someone felt that they were stronger than Zhuowen, they could challenge Zhuowen. If they defeated Zhuowen, they would become the new number 1 in the 9 underworlds. Qing Longzi and Gui Sha exchanged a look. They were both overjoyed. Chao Rong's words were undoubtedly beneficial to them. On the other hand, Lu Hantian and the other disciples of the Fine Gods Academy frowned. They knew that this rule was extremely disadvantageous to Zhuowen. Lord Chao Rong, Lu Hantian still wanted to speak, but Chao Rong glared at him. A terrifying saint aura crushed down. Lu Hantian couldn't help but tremble. He forcefully swallowed the words that he wanted to say. My decision cannot be disobeyed. If you dare to interrupt next time, you know the consequences. Chao Rong said. The terrifying saint aura slowly retracted. His face was still calm. Big brother Hantian, since there are many people who are not convinced that I am the number 1 in the 9 underworlds, then I will accept the challenge. Otherwise, others will say that I am a coward. Zhuowen waved his hand at Lu Hantian and said indifferently. Lu Hantian sighed and didn't say anything. But when he thought of the power of the Buddha demon eye that Zhuowen had displayed, the worry in his heart lessened a lot. He knew that even if Zhuowen wasn't Qing Longzi's opponent, escaping shouldn't be a problem. Zhuowen took a step forward and stared at Gui Sha and Qing Longzi. He said indifferently, The 2 of you are not convinced. Do you want to come together? Or do you want to come one by one? We need to come together to kill you. I alone am enough. Gui Sha snickered. He took a step forward, and the demonic qi on his body surged and rushed into the sky. The demonic qi became more and more terrifying. It gathered into a huge demonic head in the sky. This demonic head held the sword of slaughter. Gui Sha's cultivation has advanced to the void sacred realm. He has also grasped the law of slaughter and the law of slaughter. The combination of the two laws is flawless. It's enough to make Zhuowen suffer. Outside the 9 Underworld Sky platform, Huang Yimou revealed a smile. Looking at Guisha's attack, his eyes were full of confidence. Die! Guisha laughed sinisterly. He took a step forward and stood on the demonic head's shoulder. Then he pressed down with his right hand. The demonic head held the sword of slaughter and slashed down from the sky. Countless astral winds swept out. Demonic chi soared into the sky and the space collapsed. What a powerful attack! Guisha's attack caused many martial artists to turn pale. It was obvious that Guisha had used his full strength from the start. Zhuowen stood in the air and opened his fire eye. Flames soared into the sky, and complex flame runes spread out on the surface of his body. At the same time, Zhuowen activated the full power of his sacred body. The golden veins combined with the flame runes, and golden flames burned on the surface of his body. Break! Chapter 1490. Qing Longzi's abstention. This punch contained the power of 10,000 caddies, and could break through all techniques. Kacha! The sword formed by the law of slaughter instantly collapsed. Zhuowen's legs bounced, and golden veins spread all over his body. A blazing golden light spread out. It was like there was a small sun in Zhuowen's body, giving off a supreme multicolored light. Guisha's face was extremely ugly. The sword formed by the law of slaughter had been directly shattered by Zhuowen's punch. This was beyond his expectations. Mashallah, demons and monsters! The Mashallah's power was above the law of slaughter. Guisha didn't believe that the Mashallah couldn't do anything to Zhuowen. As soon as he said that, countless demonic figures emerged from the huge demonic head. Demons, monsters, ghosts, and monsters all rushed out. It was as if 100 ghosts were walking in the night. Zhuowen punched out with his right hand. Golden flames soared into the sky. Countless demons and monsters screamed as they were surrounded by the terrifying golden flames, and were annihilated. Thump! 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 After annihilating these demons and monsters, Zhuowen's feet kicked the air 3 times, changing directions 3 times. He was like a rock spreading its wings as he descended in front of the huge demonic shadow. Rumble! Then Zhuowen punched out again. The supreme power of the sacred body crushed down. It was as if countless mountains were falling from the sky. It was also as if countless meteorites were falling from the sky. Break! Guisha's pupils shrank. He roared and pressed down with his right hand. The terrifying demonic shadow stretched out a huge hand, clenched its fingers, and smashed towards Zhuowen. Compared to Zhuowen's body, the huge fist was as small as an ant. Zhuowen's fist was hundreds of meters long. Rumble! The 2 fists collided. Under the demonic shadow's fist, Zhuowen's tiny body straightened. His small body contained a majestic power that could shake the heavens and split the earth. Then, the demonic shadow's huge fist shattered into countless black clouds under Zhuowen's tiny fist. However, the demonic shadow's body was too big. A fist was just a small part of it. Thump! 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 Zhuowen was extremely fast. He was like an ethereal shadow as he stepped through the air. The crowd was dazzled. They couldn't even see Zhuowen's body clearly. Every time the shadow flashed, the demonic shadow's body emitted clouds of black clouds. In less than half an hour, the demonic shadow's huge body was covered in holes, as if it was pierced by thousands of swords. Whoosh! Zhuowen took a step. Zhuowen's his chi. And chi. Chi. Zhuowen stopped. So this is your mashallah. It can't even withstand a single blow, Zhuowen said with a mocking smile. Hearing this, Guisha's expression became extremely ugly. Zhuowen's words were simply an insult to him. Rumble! Rumble! Just as Zhuowen's voice fell, the demonic shadows formed by Emo Sha's laws exploded continuously. Then, the demonic shadows collapsed into nothingness. Guisha, who was standing on Emo Ying's shoulder, had an ashen expression as he fell from the sky in a sorry state. You forced me. Guisha flicked his finger. A black ring appeared in his right hand. The ring was covered with black spikes. Demonic chi filled the sky. Profound saint artifact. Ghost wheel. When Guisha took out the ring, many people recognized the profound saint artifact in his hand. Guisha is a void profound saint. He can use the true power of a profound saint artifact. He should be able to suppress Zhuowen. Desolate Island Master Huang Yimou frowned and said, "Die!" Guisha shouted the moment he took out the ghost wheel. He swung his right hand. The ghost wheel flew towards Zhuowen like a flying saucer. In the process of rushing out, the ghost wheel transformed into endless black ring phantoms, densely packed like black raindrops. Just looking at them made one's scalp tingle. As for the Guisha, he was like a ghost, constantly darting about among the countless black ring phantoms. His whereabouts strange and unpredictable. Whoosh! Whoosh! Guisha appeared in front of Zhuowen. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Zhuowen. He didn't even cause any spatial fluctuations. His speed is so fast. Guisha is the absolute ruler of the ghost wheel. He can move freely within the range of the ghost wheel. Huang Yimou said with a smile. Sapphire Shore and the others were slightly shocked. There was no doubt that the ghost wheel's ability was very strange. It could even be called special. Zhuowen die. Guisha's cold voice sounded in Zhuowen's ears. Then, Zhuowen realized that there were several whistling sounds around him. Around his body, for evil spirits appeared. They punched out at the same time. As the fist force blasted out, it created a terrifying pressure. It was as if the four of them were real. With the help of the profound saint artifact, your speed has increased a lot. But you think you can defeat me with this? You're too naive. Zhuowen sneered. Purple lightning spread out from his body. On his back, a pair of huge purple lightning wings grew. Void! The instant the purple lightning wings unfurled, Zhuowen clenched his right hand. The power of the void laws rose and spread around the purple lightning wings like tentacles, causing the purple lightning wings to faintly show traces of gray. Whoosh! Whoosh! With the support of the void law, the speed of Zhuowen's purple lightning wings rose to a terrifying level. When the fists of the four ghost fiends arrived, Zhuowen disappeared from where he stood, and the ghost fiend's attacks missed. What? He disappeared. Guisha's face was ferocious. He was shocked to find that Zhuowen's shadow was constantly flashing around the area covered by the ghost wheel. Wherever he passed, the void would collapse. Void collapse. When Zhuowen stopped a few hundred feet away from Guisha, he softly said. Suddenly, the void around the ghost wheel began to collapse, forming a black vacuum. Boom! Guisha, who had been flashing about within the ghost Shura wheel, froze in place when the void collapsed. At this moment Guisha was motionless. He was suspended in the void, maintaining his charging posture. It was as if there were countless ropes wrapped around his body. Whoosh! Zhuowen casually walked to Guisha's side. Without any hesitation, he took the ghost wheel from Guisha's hand and slowly put it into his spirit ring. You! Guisha was flustered and exasperated, but there was nothing he could do. The void collapsed, and he was enduring the terrifying power of the void collapse. He couldn't move his body. What about me? Zhuowen was neither hurried nor slow as he slammed his fist into Guisha's abdomen. Guisha let out a muffled groan as his back bent, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Coupled with the fact that he was still bearing the mighty force of the void collapse, his expression was extremely unsightly. Zhuowen did not care about Guisha's painful expression. He reached out his right hand and pinched Guisha's dantian. He then grabbed it, and the sound of a balloon bursting could be heard. Dantian? You crippled my dantian? Guisha endured the pain as he cried out in despair. The surrounding warriors were in an uproar. Zhuowen was really ruthless. He did not kill Guisha, but destroyed his dantian. This was making him suffer a fate worse than death. Creak! The island master, Huang Yimou, clenched his fists and said coldly to Zhuowen, Junior, that's enough. Don't go too far. Zhuowen slowly turned around and stared at Huang Yimou. Is this considered going too far? Compared to what you are about to do, I feel that this kind of thing is insignificant. Huang Mo's face froze and he said in a low voice, Forgive people when possible. I told you not to kill Guisha. Looking at Huang Mo's unyielding attitude, Zhuowen couldn't be bothered with him. He clenched his right hand and grabbed Guisha's nascent soul. He pressed it between his eyebrows and casually threw Guisha's corpse on the ground. Plop! Guisha's body fell to the ground, stirring up a lot of dust. At the same time, it also made everyone's heart beat faster. Qing Longzi's expression became serious. He had not expected Guisha to be killed so easily. Zhuowen was not a saint yet. Wasn't his battle prowess a little too terrifying? As soon as Guisha died, his saint luck entered Zhuowen's forehead. Boom! The 25 golden lines on Zhuowen's forehead expanded again, giving birth to another 3 golden lines, turning into 28 golden lines. The moment the 3 golden tattoos appeared, Zhuo Wenming could clearly feel that the golden cocoon that Blackie had turned into in his sea of consciousness had expanded quite a bit. It even began to beat rhythmically, as if it was a heart full of vitality. Zhuowen, once you have more than 30 golden lines, your saint luck will allow me to completely break out of my cocoon and transform into a butterfly. When the golden cocoon was beating, Xiao Hei's voice rose in Zhuowen's mind. 30 golden lines? Zhuowen murmured in a low voice. His gaze fell on Qing Longzi, who was not far away. He hovered in the air and looked down at the latter. Qing Longzi, Guisha is dead. Don't you want to be first in 9 serenities? Come and fight. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Zhuowen's challenge immediately attracted the attention of many people. Everyone's gaze turned to Qing Longzi. Qing Longzi narrowed his eyes. His right foot that was about to step forward suddenly froze, because Sapphire Shore had suddenly transmitted a message to him. Qing Longzi, don't accept the challenge. This guy is a little strange. Although he has not become a saint yet, his battle prowess is extremely terrifying. In addition, this guy has 5 types of laws. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to deal with him. Wait until the 9 Serenities conference is over. Hearing this, Qing Longzi's eyes flashed. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally accepted Sapphire Shore's suggestion. In fact, Qing Longzi did not care much about the battle prowess that Zhuowen had just displayed. What he was afraid of was that this guy had 5 types of laws on him at the same time. If all 5 types of laws were to erupt at the same time, even if he was a glimpse profound saint, it would be difficult to take him down. I forfeit. Lord Chao Rong, the 9 Serenities conference can come to an end. Qing Longzi suddenly cupped his hands towards Chao Rong and said in a clear voice. He did not blush or feel embarrassed because he had forfeited. Whoosh! Qing Longzi's forfeiture caused quite a commotion. No one had expected Qing Longzi to forfeit. After all, he had solemnly vowed to challenge Zhuo Wen for first place in the 9 underworlds. Could it be that Qing Longzi is afraid because of Guisha's death? It shouldn't be. After all, Qing Longzi is much stronger than Guisha. He shouldn't be afraid of Zhuowen. Chapter 1491. Ruthless Suppression. You have to fight even if you don't want to. Zhuowen's eyes were cold and murderous. Without waiting for Qing Longzi to react, he stomped on the air and fell from the sky, smashing heavily onto Qing Longzi. Qing Longzi took a dozen steps back with his right foot. His eyes narrowed into slits as he stared at Zhuowen and said coldly, "Didn't I say it already? I've already forfeited. You provoked me so aggressively just now, and now you're forfeiting? Do you think that's possible?" Zhuowen said coldly. "Zhuowen, do you really think I'm afraid of you? You're a dying man anyway, so I won't argue with you." Qing Longzi snorted coldly as he stared at Chao Rong and said respectfully, "Lord Chao Rong, you can actually announce the end of the 9 Underworld Conference now. This Zhuowen attacked me without permission, and has already violated the rules." Chao Rong smiled faintly and said meaningfully, "The challenge continues. Forfeiture is invalid." After saying that, Chao Rong stood in the air and looked down at Zhuowen and Qing Longzi, as if he was watching a good show. "Let's fight." Zhuowen stomped on the ground with his right foot and shot toward Zhuowen like a cheetah. The power of the saint body surrounded his body, making him as hot as the sun. Bastard! Qing Longzi did not dare to be careless. He flicked his finger and took out a dragon-headed broadsword from his spirit ring. The blade was filled with terrifying saint aura. It was also a profound saint artifact. Slash. Qing Longzi slashed out horizontally. The surrounding blade light and sword shadows, the sun and the moon rose and fell. The terrifying law of fire burned in the blade light. It's said that Qing Longzi has comprehended 3 types of law. It seems that the law of fire is one of them. Zhuowen murmured as he took out the 9-star 8 trigrams spear from his spirit ring. The law of fire also spread out, causing the surface of the spear to burn with intense flames. Rumble! The spear and the blade light collided. The flames soared into the sky, and the space trembled. Eye of Ice! In the instant that the spear and the saber were in a deadlock, Zhuowen activated his Eye of Ice, and the law of ice swirled out. At this moment, the laws of ice and fire revolved around Zhuowen's body. The 2 different powers constantly intertwined, forming a massive illusory palace around Zhuowen. Suppress! Zhuowen swung his spear and blasted the palace phantom. The palace phantom tore through the air and landed on top of Qing Longzi's head. The illusory palace instantly materialized. Ice and fire energy overflowed and smashed towards Qing Longzi like a mountain. Qing Longzi took a deep breath, formed a seal with his right hand and shouted, "Seal!" At the same time, his right hand quickly drew a line in the air, drawing a large seal character on the surface of the ice and fire palace. A powerful sealing power poured out from the word seal, and the materialized ice and fire palace was sealed in midair, unable to move at all. Law of Seal! Looking at the sealed ice and fire palace, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and revealed a grave expression. This Qing Longzi was indeed extraordinary. The power of the law of seal was rather strange, and there was nothing it could not seal. Even the ice and fire palace condensed from the laws of ice and fire could seal it in midair. Zhuowen did not panic. The law of void attached to the purple lightning wings, and he instantly escaped into the void. When he reappeared, he had already landed behind Qing Longzi. Ding! The spear pierced towards Qing Longzi's vital point at a tricky angle. Qing Longzi seemed to have sensed it. With his right foot as the center, he stomped his left foot and spun fiercely. The dragon-head saber accurately landed on the spear. Scram! Qing Longzi roared angrily. The muscles on his body swelled, and his body expanded from 10 feet to 15 feet. He was 5 times taller than Zhuowen, like a small mountain. Dang! 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 Qing Longzi's power increased by hundreds and thousands. Zhuowen retreated a few steps, and his right hand that held the spear cracked. He frowned slightly and said, "Law of strength." Only the law of strength could increase one's power by so much in an instant. In the confrontation just now, Zhuowen felt that he wasn't facing a person, but an insurmountable mountain. That strength was as great as 10,000 caddies. Law of strength, law of fire, and law of seal. Zhuowen's gaze was cautious as he stared at Qing Longzi standing in front of him. He muttered in a low voice and frowned. Qing Longzi was surrounded by the power of 3 laws. His hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked valiant and heroic. "Looks like you're only SOSO. Looking at Zhuowen, who was at a disadvantage, Qing Longzi directly threw Sapphire Shore's advice to the back of his mind. He stomped on the ground and rushed towards Zhuowen like an arrow released from a bow. The dragon-head saber slashed out, and the 3 laws lingered on the blade, erupting with a terrifying power. Boom! The law of the void attached to the purple lightning wings, causing Zhuowen's speed to reach an unprecedented level. The dragon-head saber slashed down, but it only cut Zhuowen's shadow. As for Zhuowen's real body, he had already escaped into the void. Whoosh! When Zhuowen appeared, he had already landed on the ice-fire palace that was sealed in midair. "You're really good at running away." Qing Longzi was stifled. Zhuowen, who had the law of the void, was too slippery, causing him to be unable to use his power. It was extremely sullen. Running away? Not necessarily. Zhuowen's lips curled up, and his right palm pressed on the seal on the surface of the ice-fire palace. Desolation. The law of desolation swept out, and the seal gradually withered and dimmed like a withered leaf. Desolation could silently dry up a vigorous life force. Even if it was the seal's power, it could still dry it up. When the seal's power was corroded by desolation, Zhuowen's right palm touched the top of the ice fire palace. Then, the void around the ice fire palace collapsed, revealing a huge black hole. Whoosh! The ice fire palace fell into the black hole and disappeared. You. Looking at Zhuowen's series of actions, Qing Longzi frowned, and an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Dang! However, Zhuowen's next step did not allow Qing Longzi to think too much. Zhuowen's feet stomped on the void, and a circular airwave spread out from the bottom of his feet. Zhuowen was like an arrow that left the bow, and he instantly appeared in front of Qing Longzi. Slash! Qing Longzi's dragon head broadsword slashed at Zhuowen. The three laws fused in the broadsword radiance, and it emitted a terrifying power that could shake one's soul. However, Zhuowen was very cunning. The moment the broadsword radiance was about to reach him, he stepped into the void and dodged the attack. Whoosh! Behind Qing Longzi, the void split open, and Zhuowen stepped out. He stretched out his right hand, and the 9-star 8 trigrams spear stabbed at Qing Longzi's back like an electric drill. Qing Longzi seemed to have foreseen the future. He placed the dragon head broadsword on his back, and with a clang, the tip of the 9-star 8 trigrams spear pressed against the blade of the dragon head broadsword, creating countless sparks. Dang! Dang! Qing Longzi had the law of strength, and his strength could reach 10,000 pounds. Zhuowen leaped and retreated dozens of steps. In terms of strength, you are no match for me. Qing Longzi sneered, and turned to look at Zhuowen mockingly. However, the moment his gaze fell on Zhuowen, he was stunned. This was because Zhuowen had a mocking smile on his face, as if he was looking at a joke. Void! Rumble! While Qing Longzi was still in shock, a huge crack appeared in the void above his head. From that huge crack, a majestic palace of ice and fire came crashing down like a mountain. What? Qing Longzi finally knew why Zhuowen had such a mocking smile when he retreated. It turned out that this was his goal. Using the law of void, he first put the ice fire palace into the void, and when he was not paying attention, he summoned the ice fire palace that was hidden in the void and suppressed him in one fell swoop. Do you think a mere palace can suppress me? Qing Longzi sneered. Even if the ice fire palace was huge and majestic, with the law of strength, he was not afraid of the suppression of the ice fire palace. Break! Qing Longzi roared and threw out a punch, hitting the base of the ice fire palace. The energy of the ice fire palace dissipated. However, the strange thing was that after the ice fire palace trembled for a while, it continued to suppress Qing Longzi. Zhuowen was trying his best to activate the ice fire eyes. Waves of ice fire energy swept out from the ice fire eyes and entered the ice fire palace, causing the aura of the ice fire palace to become even more vast and terrifying. At the same time, Zhuowen jumped up, and the mighty power of the divine body gathered on his legs. He then landed on the top of the ice fire palace. Ever since he had obtained the basic manual of using the holy talisman, Zhuowen had become more proficient in using the ice fire holy talisman. His control of the ice fire palace had almost reached the point of perfection. Even a glimpse profound saint like Qing Longzi would still be crushed by the ice fire palace, without exception. At the same time, coupled with the power of Zhuowen's divine body, even a towering mountain could be crushed with a stomp, let alone Qing Longzi. Qing Longzi roared angrily, and the muscles on his body swelled. He kept struggling, but he was powerless in front of the ice fire palace and the power of the divine body. In the end, he was completely suppressed by the ice fire palace. The vast and magnificent ice fire palace stood on the square of the 9 nether sky platform. It was like a mountain and many people looked up at it. However, the ice fire palace was not stable. From time to time, there would be sounds of violent bombardment. Apparently, Qing Longzi was wantonly destroying things inside. Along with the bombardment, there was also Qing Longzi's cursing. 7 emotions precious seal. Zhuowen's eyes were dark, and the ice fire eyes flashed with a strange cold light. At the same time, he took out the 7 seals of the 7 emotions precious seal, and they floated around his body. With the 7 emotions precious seal, and the power of the divine body, Zhuowen was like a god that had descended to the mortal world. After doing this, Zhuowen did not hesitate to enter the ice fire palace. Then, The sound of fighting could be heard from the Icefire Palace. At the same time, there were mournful screams. After about 15 minutes, Zhuowen jumped out of the Icefire Palace again. In his right hand, he was carrying an extremely miserable figure. It's Qing Longzi. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.